Good morning. Welcome to the next session of Grande Prairie City Council budget discussion for the 2020 year. We have gone through a number of operational deletions from the budget, a number of operational additions. We had some significant discussion on the capital plan, some referrals from administration, recommendations for changes, and council also dug further into the capital plan to discuss a number of different items. We are now down to items that have been referred to the capital discussion over the course of the year. From time to time, there are different things that emerge, and council will refer those items to the to the budget discussion, so they can be discussed in context of the overall city budget. So that's where we are today, council. We'll look to conclude that. There were a couple of other items that were flagged. Highway 43 operating, we may have discussed that a little bit, but what's that? So we've got it on the list. We'll just check in with everybody when we get to that point. Just want to make sure that we had that. And then there's also about community group funding. There's a little bit of a question about that, and I think about maybe more around the process as we're going forward. But anyways, with that sort of little bit of an overview of where we've been, where we stand today, I'll turn it over to the city manager for an introduction of sort of the activities that we're going to undertake today.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everybody. So as we enter into the final phase of budget deliberations, as the mayor indicated, we have the block that we call referred to budget items from different committee meetings. This is also an opportunity for council members to bring any other items that you wish to discuss at the end. So it's an open session. But before going into this block, the finance department will provide an update about the total reductions and the tax impact, potential transfer to reserve, and the adjustment on the capital tax, because as you remember yesterday there was some items funded by capital tax that have an impact now in the total amount available for projects in 2020. So finance will provide an update about those items. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rocio. So we'll look to our finance team, or we're going to the Director of Corporate Services to kick that off.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So we currently have a total approved savings of $5.995 million. And that would keep our, if we kept our tax rate at 1.5%, that would allow for a $2.4 million transfer to reserves, or we could decrease our transfer to reserve down to 1.6. I'm sorry. Or we could bring our tax increase up to 2.1% and have a just add that $700,000 onto the transfer to reserve balance. So at any rate, let me back up here. So our transfer to reserve would be $2.4 million if we maintained a tax rate of 1.5%.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Clayton?
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. Just to clarify, because I did some side of my desk calculations as we were going through it yesterday, can you confirm for me the total amount of capital that was removed from 2020 budgets from the work we did yesterday?
Dr. Walker?
Thank you, Mayor Given. It was $700,000.
Okay. I see Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. I have the same. I had a different number as well. I'm just wondering, is there any chance to show what you captured for capital? Maybe I missed something that wasn't capital, because I had $995 for capital.
So there were two items on the list that were presented to council yesterday afternoon that were additions to the budget that would have been funded from capital tax. So we funded those when council approved those additions. And so that decreases the amount that council reduced later on.
So the Nighthawk and the,
And there was 45,000 for.
thank you.
So your landscaping. Yep. Okay, thank you. Councillor Bressy.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. And could you just, so what happens to the savings we found in the capital budget in terms of, will that decrease the tax rate in 2020, or will that create more room in our capital account for future projects? Just what actually happens to that money we saved out of the capital budget?
Dr. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So that is a question that will be posed to council at the end of the session today. You have a choice. You have a choice, either increase the transfer to reserve by the amount of that reduction in capital tax, or have some other tax rate. I would caution, though, some other tax rate in the first year of this 4-year plan will affect future years.
Okay, thanks for that update about where we stand, given the work over the last couple of days. Then we will continue on. I don't see anybody else in the queue. We'll continue on with the presentation of the items that have been referred to budget. And who's going to lead that? Each director is going to lead the discussion on the items that for their area. So I guess if we're starting on the left-hand side with downtown phase 4, is that Director Glavin?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Given. I'll give a brief introduction to the project. So what we're discussing is the Phase 4 and Phase 4A improvements to downtown. Phase 4 consists of approximately 450 meter section of 100th Avenue between 98th Street and 100th Street. The cost of this project is approximately $16.2 million. That is an estimate, with $11.7 million of that being the city's portion and $4.5 million the Aquaterra portion. Phase 4A is approximately 180 meters of 100th Street between 99th Avenue and 101st Avenue at a cost of $5.3 million. And the city's portion is 4.16, with the balance of approximately 1.2 being Aquaterra's portion. Both phases would bring the surface and subsurface standards up to the standards set in phases 1 to 3. This would include all of the deep utility replacements, urban roadway upgrades, streetscape elements, and the city fiber conduits.
Okay, thanks, Director Glavin. So we'll open for discussion debate. I did have one question about the cash flow implications. There's sort of there are two different phases shown in that slide, and an alternative for each of the phases. My understanding is that the alternatives have a cash flow implication for the city because one is reflective of Aquaterra paying for assets where the city would receive dividends. So can somebody explain what the impact of that is over time?
Sure, I'll give a basic answer, and if you'd like more detail, our finance manager is ready to give that. But essentially, in one scenario where we pay for all of the improvements, we would then receive dividends in year 3 after the asset transfer. So we would transfer the Aquaterra portion of assets that we paid for as part of the project to Aquaterra, which would then make us eligible for dividends. And there's a 2-year vesting period before we would receive any of those dividends. So the dividends that we would receive would help offset the debt servicing costs for the project. The other scenario would have us not paying for the Aquaterra portion, which would then not trigger an asset transfer and therefore no increased dividends.
Okay. So just to be clear on this table, so for the 2020, 2021, 2022, there is a net cost to the city. And for the balance of the borrowing period, assuming this was done through debenture borrowing, there's a net revenue to the city of $27,000 per year. Dr. Levin?
That's correct.
Okay. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm a little bit confused on that. I thought we only received the dividends on the portion that Aquaterra did. Wouldn't that be just the 5 million-ish that we'd get dividends on? Or?
Dr. Glavin?
That's correct. I'm going to let the finance manager explain why the dividends seem disproportionate to the investment, and that's due to some nuances with the Aquaterra agreement.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So when an asset transfer happens to Aquaterra, a stock dividend occurs at the time of the asset transfer. So what'll happen is Aquaterra will clear the retained earnings to zero and increase our equity by our ownership percentage, where the discretionary dividends are based on our equity in Aquaterra. That is what creates that significant increase to the dividend income. So in my analysis, I did have to assume what a retained earnings growth would be on an annual basis. So I went back to the last time we transferred the last downtown project. So retained earnings had grown by 12 million in that year. I assumed the same growth in my numbers to get what our dividend income could potentially be.
Councillor Platt?
Thanks, Mayor Given. I guess what I'm a little bit confused on is what the amount we're getting the dividend on. Because when I look at this, it looks like we're getting a dividend on the whole 16.2 million.
No, so it does assume that the asset transfer occurs at just the Aquaterra portion, but that because of the stock dividend, our equity balance would increase by our portion of retained earnings. So there's two numbers that go into it: the stock dividend number and the asset transfer, and then the dividends is based on all of that.
The Director of Infrastructure and Economic Development had a comment as well.
Thanks, Mayor Given. To make this clear, any asset transfer would trigger the clearing of retained earnings, not just this one. So if there was a different, any of the partners, I believe, if they transferred assets into the system, it would trigger this same amount.
I guess where my confusion is coming in is, are we saying we're transferring in $16 million worth of assets, or the $5 million worth of assets? Because I thought if it was the $5 million at the 5% dividend, it would be about $250,000 a year.
Director Glavin?
It is the $5 million of assets.
Okay.
To be clear, though, the dividend that we're speaking of is not calculated solely on the transfer of assets due to the retained earnings being cleared. It might be easier to show it on a spreadsheet. I'm not sure if Daniel might be able to pull that up in a minute to show how this works. So this is triggered by an asset transfer, not just this project. And if the county, for example, transferred assets, our dividends would increase as a result of that.
So while we're finding that information, did the same thing happen when we transferred either the previous portion of the of the downtown program?
That's correct.
And so at that time, how much did it increase the dividend? Yeah. So Danielle? Okay, work us through the spreadsheet.
Okay, so you'll see in 2017 when we did the asset transfer. So I show our opening equity balance, the result of the stock dividend, the assets that were transferred, and our closing equity balance. Then I've got our eligible for special dividend because of the 2-year waiting period. So 61 million for 2017. And that is 1.88 was our special dividend rate at that time. And then again, same calculations for 2018. We have the stock dividend. That was just a 1-year growth of retained earnings that was split between the shareholders. We transfer our asset, we have a new equity balance. And this is what the special dividends are based on.
Yeah, I think you need to guide us through what cells you're actually talking about, because there's a bunch on the sheet, and you were referencing one you were looking at, but council wasn't necessarily looking at the same cell.
Okay, so I'm looking at the 2017 column, so column G. My opening balance is in row 5, 61.4 million. We transferred assets to Aquaterra. As a result of that, we got our share of retained earnings of 30.3 million. That's the value of the assets that were transferred, the 1.5 million, giving us a new closing equity balance of 93 million. Now, because there's a 2-year waiting period on dividends related to, because when there's an asset transfer, we have to wait for 2 years before that can affect our special dividends. They then calculated the special dividends on the 61.4 million for 2017 and 18. That's in row 10. And our special dividend rate is 2.48%. I assumed that going forward. I assume the same growth in retained earnings for potential stock dividend in 2021. 28 million. That's in column K. We do the asset transfer, and you will see the effects of that coming in 2 years later on the dividends, your last column. And it creates an impact here of 800,000. That's the net difference between what we were receiving prior to the asset transfer.
So in a simplified way for the mayor, so the impact to city's dividends don't come just from the 5% on the $4 million. It comes from the fact that we have upped the amount of dividends that we get on all the rest of our ownership of Aquaterra.
Correct, because we now have an increased equity balance, so you have an increased base of your 2.48% dividend rate.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm sure there may be some questions about this. Director Glavin, you're still in the queue from just where you were before, so I see that was maybe that answer provided earlier. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I guess where I'm still confused on the $28 million line. I'm not. I appreciate we're transferring assets in for $4 million and we get a return on that. I don't understand the $28 million part. I don't understand. Yeah, I guess if you could maybe walk me through that, I apologize. I just don't understand that part.
Yeah, absolutely fair enough. It's complicated. I think I get it. And I think it'll be helpful to get more explanation. Director Walker?
Thank you, Mayor Given. So what you saw represented there is the total discretionary dividend that the city would be expected to receive once this asset transfer is made, as opposed to specifically for that this downtown phase 4 project. So it was based on the entirety of our discretionary spending that we would, or discretionary dividend. Does that help? So it increases the total that we would receive. So the portion of $5 million is probably $10,000, maybe $15,000 as an increased dividend.
I just need to know where what's the $28 million? I'm struggling with what the $28 million represents.
Ms. Whiteway?
Thank you, Mayor Given. So within the shareholder agreement, it's a clause in there that upon an asset transfer, Aquaterra will distribute what's sitting in retained earnings to all shareholders. So clearing retained earnings to zero, increasing all shareholders' equity based on their proportionate share of ownership in Aquaterra. That number is an assumed number. I can't predict what retained earnings will be at the time of an asset transfer, but I'm assuming that our share of retained earnings at that time will be $28 million. This is based on the fact that upon the last asset transfer, we got $9 million for 1 year's worth of retained earnings. I'm assuming we'll get a few years worth of retained earnings by the time that the construction is complete and transferred to Aquaterra.
Sorry, we're giving them a $4 million asset and they're going to give us a $28 million stock.
Correct. And that's what happened. So that's exactly what happened upon our last 2 asset transfers. It's the rules of the shareholder agreement. that retained earnings is cleared to zero and put into the equity of the shareholders.
Okay, I still don't understand it. I don't understand how it balances for Aquaterra that they would be giving us $1 million on a $4 million investment. If they would have just.
City Manager?
I will try to put it in a different context. So the city receives every year an amount of money in the form of a dividend that goes to general revenue. Is one of our sources of income, in addition to taxation, grants, franchise fees for Atco Electric, Atco Gas, Aquaterra dividend, another source of income for the city. That is the total amount that I believe Daniel is calculating here. Keep that in mind. Because of downtown project phase 4, on the expense side now, we have a new cost to service the debt. The cost to service the debt is around $800,000 per year. So that's new expense. So what we're doing here is calculating the new expense, $800,000, versus the total amount of dividend the city is receiving, not only for the $4 million or so component of water and sewer in downtown, phase 4, the total. And when you compare those two numbers, yes, there is a net revenue for the city. But we need to differentiate that. This is not a new dividend created only for the downtown phase 4 component. It's the total amount of dividend for the whole assets, the whole equity that the city has on Aquaterra.
Okay, so.
Is that correct? Okay.
So can I just clarify, if we didn't do phase 4 at all, would the $28 million still show up?
Thank you, Mayor Given. No, you're correct. We would not receive that $28 million increase to our equity because we are not triggering it. The only thing that triggers it is an asset transfer. So it would remain in Aquaterra's retained earnings, and it would not be divided amongst the shareholders.
Director Glavin?
All right, I'll take a last crack at it. So essentially, anybody with a corporation that wants to pay themselves a dividend needs net income. The net income transfers into retained earnings. If you don't have retained earnings, you can't issue a dividend. So from the time of our last asset transfer, Aquaterra has been making money as net income, transferring, and that forms part of the retained earnings. The only way to get a stock dividend is from those retained earnings. The only way to trigger a stock dividend is to have an asset transfer. So that $28 million is our portion of that retained earnings from the net income since our last asset transfer. And the only way we get the retained earnings out of this is a stock dividend. And then our increase in dividend is just based on our 2.48% of the stock that we now hold that's been issued to us as a result of the transfer.
So if I'm understanding whether we did downtown or not, if we transferred a $5 asset, it would still trigger this then?
I don't know what the minimum amount is, but essentially, yes.
So I just don't want to confuse this that because of downtown's transfer, we're going to get this stock dividend. To me, they're separate things. If we're transferring an asset, that's great. But I guess to me, this is a little bit confusing that we're transferring an asset and we're saying now that all that captured is going to go towards because we did downtown's phase. We could do anything else and trigger this by the sounds of it. So I just want to be careful that we're not seeing this as if we do phase 4, we're going to have all this money recaptured because we could choose to do any option with that if I'm understanding this then.
Yeah, I think it's accurate to say the city would have full flexibility to do whatever they wish to do with that income. That income would not arrive unless the city developed probably the $5 example. I think at a technical level, actually probably not even at a technical level, it probably says that it has to be a minimum size for Aquaterra to accept it. But yes, it's true with any capital infrastructure that the city built that was of use to Aquaterra, that Aquaterra accepted, it would trigger the same effect. And the city would have the opportunity to use that revenue for any purpose. Administration's presented in a way that puts it against the debt servicing here for illustration purposes. So I've got a few administration folks in the queue. So if you've rung in to try and help us out with questions, you can feel free to either take your request to speak out, or I'll just skip over you and then we'll watch the camera flash around. We're going to go to Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. I appreciate administration putting it against the debt servicing. I think for illustration and perhaps in real life, that's the right thing to do. Can I just clarify? I think I'm on the right track here, but that equity increase continues in perpetuity until such a time as we change our equity in some other way. But that 2.48% would be ours always.
Ms. Whiteway?
Correct. So once, yes, that would continue on. That's an assumption. It's discretionary, so it is currently what we receive from Aquaterra, but it is discretionary in nature.
Fair enough. But once the debt is serviced, then it is discretionary income for the city.
Correct.
Based on those assumptions. Yeah,
that's right.
Great. Okay, thank you.
And just Councillor Minhas and then Councillor Thiessen in the queue. So just can we clarify the 800,000 that was shown on the slide is not the totality of the city's income from Aquaterra dividends, is it? What is the total amount that we'd be forecasting?
Thank you, Mayor Given. So 800 is the net impact of the new dividend rate because of the asset transfer. Currently, we're in 2018, we received $1.5 million in discretionary dividends.
So 1.5, and so the forecast is the 800,000 would be $800,000 more than 1.5.
So 1.5 is what we received in 2018, correct? Once the results of the 17 asset transfers and 18 asset transfers come into play, we're anticipating 2.5 million from that. And then once the phase 4 is triggered in future years, we'll see another 800,000, which is why that number was chosen to be net against the debt for a total of $3.3 million.
Okay. Councillor Friesen, follow up.
Thank you. And maybe it's back on the, but I'll ask the quick question rather than looking again. The debt servicing of roughly 800 a year, is that on just that 5 million, just the Aquaterra portion, or is that on the entire debt for downtown for 4?
That's Whiteway.
Thank you, Mayor Given. That is on the entire project, so 16.2 million for phase 4.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I got kind of confused, but I just trying to understand. Like now you said 63 billion, we add 28 million, that make 93 million you show on our assets. So if we take 5 million out, it'll leave 88 million asset, or we still have 93, then we take the next 3 years 800,000 less of that retained earning from Actor.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So this is our equity balance, so it's separate from the company's retained earnings. So this will be maintained. This is, I suppose, the only way this could decrease is if we somehow gave up shares in the company, right? So this is our ownership value. It's separate from retained earnings.
So the other side, you're saying if we don't use that 5 million, then we don't get the retained earning. Every 2 years, you guys put the retained earning into the asset side, right? From the extra business.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Correct. The only way we will increase that number is upon the asset transfer. Otherwise, it would stay as it is now.
Oh, okay. So then that's what it getting in my brain. I remember we used to own 82% extra shares. Now we're showing 71%. So county did those assets extra. That's why they got more shares there. It just maybe not related to this one, but I just want to get curiosity.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So even if another shareholder was to do an asset transfer, we would still get our share of retained earnings. So it's consistent for all shareholders. So if, for your example, the county were to transfer an asset to Aquaterra, this stock dividend would still occur.
So if we do it, then county will get it that too, right?
The county and the other shareholders will also receive an increase in their stocks reflective of the proportion of the company that they own. So the city owns 74% of the company, and the other 25% is spread between the other 3 shareholders.
Thank you.
Councillor Thiessen?
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Thank you very much, Ms. Weiwei. Just a quick question. There's been a lot of discussion on council about our storm water system and potentially transferring that asset. Something like that would trigger something like this too, and actually provide even greater value for the city 3 years down the road, if that were to happen.
Correct. So an asset transfer, again, depending on the retained earnings value that's there in Aquaterra, yes, we would see an increase in the equity.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Plott, you're in the queue again.
Sorry, I had the same question about Storm.
Okay. Councillor Minhas.
So the last 3 phases we didn't get the asset on them. Is that clear?
No. Ms. Whiteway, do you want to explain what happened with previous assets the city built and transferred to Aquaterra as part of the previous phases of downtown?
Thank you, Mayor Given. Yep, so in 2017 and 2018, the same thing occurred. So a stock dividend was done. So our equity balance went up. We transferred the assets. The same thing that I'm anticipating for phase 4 is what happened with the last transfers.
Can you show us on the spreadsheet the impact of the previous phase of downtown and the assets that we transferred there? Just to illustrate what has happened, or is, I guess, yeah, please.
So as you can see in column G under 2017, that is where we received that 30.3 million. So that was our share of their retained earnings at the time. So it increases our equity. There's the 1.5. That was the value of the asset that we transferred to them. This creates our closing equity at 93 million.
So just so in the last project we put in a $1.5 million asset.
Correct.
As a part of the downtown project, and it triggered us getting that increase in equity up to $93 million, and the impact that had on our dividend was?
We won't see that. We won't see that impact until 2 years later, so we won't see it actually until next year. But if you look at row 14, the calculated dividend, you'll see that if we're anticipating 1.5 again this year, same as last year, it would have the effect of that 800,000 approximately in 2020. So that increased to 2.3 million.
So in 2017, where the city received 1.1 million in revenue, and it jumps forecast to 2.3 in 2020. That's as a result of that asset transfer of 1.5 million back in 2017.
Correct.
Councillor Plott?
Sorry, Given. So just to clarify then, we can transfer any kind of asset. So I appreciate we're talking about downtown. We're using it in this context, but any asset transferred would trigger that stock portion of it. I'm just, can you maybe just show me the slide again that showed how much we're going to get as a dividend on the actual 5.3-ish million or 2 million or whatever it was that we're going to, if we paid for Aquaterra's portion? Sorry, so I guess for me, I'm just trying to find out, regardless of whether we do downtown or not, I think it's prudent that we look at doing some kind of an asset transfer to be able to capture the stock portion. I'm more specifically worried about how this impacts downtown is if we did do the Aquaterra portion and we received a 5% dividend, what's the amount we'd be receiving back in 2 years on that portion?
Ms. Whiteway?
Thank you, Mayor Given. So I do just also want to explain that in the shareholders agreement, they do have multiple types of assets. There's different rules for different types of assets. So for my work on this, I strictly looked at this, so I can't speak to the other types of assets and what the specific benefits of transferring those would be. I can only speak to this type of asset. But the impact is the 806,000 that will go into the future as a result of this specific transfer. But I don't want to speak to other types of assets that we could transfer and what the results would be.
I guess for me, that's important to know. I mean, if we can build a lift station and open up development opportunities in another portion of the city and still trigger these assets transferring, we could potentially be getting a lot more revenue from something like that than doing downtown. And I'm trying not to confuse this dividend with downtown and just the opportunity we have to do a transfer of assets anywhere within the city in the system, and just trying to understand what our portion of the dividend would be if we paid for Aquaterra's infrastructure in 2 years. That's because I want to break those out. I appreciate we're trying to find a way to pay for downtown, but we could do an asset transfer of different kinds and it wouldn't impact downtown. It would still impact our tax rate. So.
Okay. So any other questions for administration to help clarify our understanding of the issue? Councillor Minhas.
So these assets, we get it if we use Aquaterra 5.5 million, or if we don't use, if we pay 16 million or 11 million, that's city, like if city use that 5 million from Aquaterra, then what happen? Or we pay 16, then what happen?
Thank you, Mayor Given. So if we were to only finance 11 million, if we were not to cover the Aquaterra portion, it would not trigger an asset transfer nor a stock dividend. So we would not see any increased revenue from dividends from Aquaterra. So we have to do our portion and Aquaterra's portion in order for this to happen.
Thanks, Councillor Minhas. Okay, so I don't see anybody else in the queue with questions arising for administration. Then we should probably move on to dealing with the issue in one manner or another. So open for discussion and debate. I see some people, Councillor Friesen.
So I would like to move that council approve the construction of downtown for, yeah, is that all we need? And I want, sorry?
Councillor Clayton's just asking to see the numbers on the screen.
Sure. Yeah.
It's downtown phase 4.
So, yeah, downtown.
So can we get the, yeah, referred to budget.
There we go. Phase 4. And that we construct inclusive of Aquaterra assets. Okay. Now, do I make part of that then the transfer, or will that be separate?
I think the motion is to approve the project.
Okay.
The financial thing happens. It is an effect of the project.
All right. That's let's do this.
Open for discussion debate. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Just a question for Councillor Friesen. Could you put a time frame on that? Or when were you expecting this to happen?
Thank you. I would suggest as soon as is reasonably.
I think the question is
2021.
Can we be just a question for admin? Can we reasonably begin construction in 2020, or would it be 2021 project?
Glavin.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Design is complete of the project, so subject to tendering, we could start in 2020. Subject to tendering.
2020.
Okay, so the motion is phase 4 in 2020. Council approve adding the downtown phase 4 project, inclusive of Aquaterra assets, to the 2020 year. Now we've got all the technical details in there, so we all know what we're talking about. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I need a little bit more information on this before I can make a decision on that. I want to clarify what we could also be looking at transferring next year to transfer to receive those stock dividends. I think there's an opportunity if we're looking at just trying to find a way to transfer stock dividends. I think there's other opportunities in the community that could bring us better yields and returns than doing phase 4 sooner than later. And so I really would like to know what our opportunities are in that area.
Sure. Ms. Whiteway?
Thank you, Mayor Given. Regardless, so even if we were to transfer an asset that had a higher value or even a little bit of a lower value, we're still going to get that bump in our equity. So let's say, just for a simple example, you were to gather up $20 million worth of assets and transfer, that bump would still stay the same. It would just be that stock dividend, that increase in equity, plus whatever the asset transfers are. So you wouldn't see any benefit other than the asset value add to our equity. Regardless, the stock dividend will happen, the retained earnings will come to us, whether it would be 5.5 million or 10 million.
So,
and Councillor Platt, I think the other dimension to your question was what else do we have that we could transfer at a sort of physical level? And so for administration, are there any other assets that would trigger similar dividend impacts? Are there any other physical assets the city's in a position to be able to transfer at this stage for 2020? Director Glavin.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm not aware of anything that would be eligible for transfer, but as far as the question of could we divert this investment to a lift station for, say, $2 million or something to that effect rather than the $5 million, I think that's something, if we were given a little bit of time right now, that we could go through the agreement and make sure that that type of transfer would equally qualify.
I would appreciate that. And I guess if administration, I know Councillor Thiessen kind of asked, but what's the realistic or the probability that we think we could potentially transfer Stormwind 2020's calendar year?
I'll look to the city manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the only asset that is already built, or a system, I would say whole system that is already built, is the storm system. And as you're aware, we are initiating conversations internally first to determine the size and the different assets. The storm system is a complex system with underground and surface features. Pipes, catch basins, manholes, but also retention and detention ponds, even overland routes, considering roads. So it's going to take some time to determine really all the different assets as components of the system. Then we will have connections with Aquaterra. We did an initial calculation based on TCA, on tangible capital assets, about the value of the system. However, TCA is usually a very conservative number, I would say, to perform valuation of a system. So we need to determine then what is the proper method of valuation of the system. In other utilities, normally is used a system called reconstruction new less depreciation. So it's a complex matter that we probably need a year, I would say, to perform a proper analysis. So I don't see a whole system transfer of the storm system to Aquaterra before 2021, I would say. So 2020 will be a year of analysis and studies in coordination with Aquaterra, and 2021 execution. Thank you.
Sorry, well, thanks, Mayor Given. Just, do we anticipate or do we know of any shares that could be being transferred from the other shareholders in 2020 that would trigger this regardless?
Dr. Glavin?
Thank you, Mayor Given. None that we're aware of. We'd have to inquire further.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I guess my question is for the people sitting behind me, really, and it's about the condition of the road on Phase 4 and 4A. The road condition is fairly bad, but I'm not sure about the base and the sub-base. And like, if we do the downtown reconstruction, we're going to have to dig all that stuff up anyway. So I just want to know if we have plans to do that work, or if we've done our core drilling or whatever.
So one of the people from behind has moved forward. Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. Currently, we have not done a design specifically for rehab of the road besides what's in the downtown phase 4, which is a full reconstruction. So right now, if we'd to answer that question, I have to go back and check with the geotechnical engineer to see if there's any other specific designs that could be done.
Sorry, Councillor Thiessen, can you restate your question? I think I heard a different question than that.
Yeah, the statement, the question was just what's the condition of the base and the sub base of the road? Because if we do this downtown, we're going to have to dig it all up. If we had plans in the next year or two to do that anyways, I may be tempted to change my vote after years of this.
Shanton?
Mayor Gaben, currently right now, the road is in poor condition. I don't specifically know what the sub base and gravel is currently without going back to the geotechnical to see what's happening with that.
Okay, I'll ask another question if I may. What does transportation have planned? I know we went over a capital budget yesterday, but what do they have planned for, I guess, basic fixes like a overlay, pothole filling? Is there a budgeted amount that we can estimate that we'll spend on this year? Just to maintain the road.
Director Glaman?
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon. We don't have any specific budget for this section. It's all subject to the decision here. If we chose to put phase 4 off indefinitely and not do it, we'd then have to work that into our capital plan to make the appropriate upgrades. We've been avoiding putting significant money into both phase 4 and phase 4A, awaiting a decision. So that's why if you notice this year, there's a gap in the paving we did on 100th Street. So we did south of 99th Avenue and north of 101st Avenue, and deliberately leaving phase 4A untouched in anticipation of doing the full rehab and replacing any of the underground utilities in that area. So ultimately, we didn't want to have throwaway costs in that area where we spent a bunch of money and then the next year dug it all up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. Question for administration, and sorry, not you, Mr. Hinton. Can you tell me, remind me, because I didn't write it down when you showed it, what is the dividend amount 2 years after the $5 million asset transfer? Not the total cumulative dividend amount, just from transferring the $5 million asset.
Ms. Whiteway?
So the impact of the asset transfer on the dividends is anticipated to be around $800,000.
So transfer $5 million, 2 years later, get it $800,000.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So, and regardless of any of this, we're getting $2.3 million in 2020 from the work we did in 17. That's cumulative, though. It's not just from that asset transfer.
Ms. Whiteway?
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon. Correct. We're anticipating $2.3 million.
Okay. Okay. So, speaking to the motion, appreciate the intent of the motion. Most of you know I didn't support the project last year. Councillor Thiessen and I were two of the only ones, I think. I do think that phase 4 needs to be done, just not right now. In my opinion, I would be prepared to amend the motion. So I'd like to make an amendment that the project be moved to 2021. And speaking to that amendment, I agree that the asset transfer is great. $800,000 on $5 million is nice, but we're going to be getting 2.3 in dividends regardless of any work. And if you read the comments from the downtown retailers, etc., they're more prepared for 2021. I'm not prepared. I appreciate that the project's ready to tender. I just don't think in these economic times that we can rip up the downtown again. And if the retailers tell us they're not ready, why would we push it to them just to get $800,000? It doesn't make sense to me. So my motion, as I mentioned, is to amend the construction start to be 2021.
Okay. Motion to amend the construction start to sort of reflect phase 4 in 2021. So I have a list of people that were already in the queue on the previous motion. So we're going to redirect to, you don't have to go out of the queue. We can just stay on the amendment. So speaking to the amendment of 2021. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I just want to clear up this confusion. I appreciate there's an asset transfer, but if we choose to do the $5 million, that triggers a 5% dividend. Is what the $5 million of paying for Aquaterra's assets instead of them paying for them and us paying for them triggers a 5% dividend. So if I'm understanding that properly, we will receive $250,000 a year 2 years from now. The difference is the stock transfer. Am I not correct on that?
Ms. Whiteway?
Thank you, Mayor Given. No, there's no 5% dividend, so it's a discretionary dividend. Currently, we receive 1.5%. Sorry, we were receiving 1.8%. We're now up to 2.48% as the discretionary dividend rate.
Okay.
We have a mandatory dividend. Maybe that's what you're referring to. However, these asset transfers will not affect our mandatory dividend that we receive. This is just the discretionary dividend.
Okay, apparently I need an Aquaterra 201 and 301 coming up at some point here. I'll switch gears a little bit here. Just a question on the capital tax. I know last year we increased our road rehab and some of the funding we did to that. And one of the concerns or things I've wondered about for quite a long time is if this was a section of road anywhere else in the city, we'd be repairing that with capital tax funding for that portion of the road. And I'm wondering if administration can let me know, if this was another area road and we did 2 blocks, what would that cost for concrete repairs and for the road repairs? Because for me, I'd like to see that be coming out of capital tax. I don't think that should be borrowed. I think that should be part of our normal road rehab program. I feel like we're kind of blanketing downtown as a special thing, and it should be, to me, it should be treated like any other road in the city. So I'm okay with administration taking some time on that. That's a big question. I can circle back.
Sure. So the question would be, what portion of the project would be similar to a road rehab and overlay in terms of value? Is that like?
Yeah, and I guess my intent with this, Mayor Given, is that if it's, say it's $1 million, that we take $1 million out of what would have been road rehab and repairs in 2020 or 2021, whatever year this goes ahead, and that comes off of the total of this project.
Yeah, I think I can see where you're going there, Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you, Mayor Given. I'll be voting against this amendment, but also the original motion. And for me, the reason is that this phase, I'm not convinced that this phase is going to stimulate development. I was in favor of phase 3 because I think a really good case was made that was needed for densification, and I think it was appropriate to borrow money in order to get increased development in our downtown core. For me, phase 4, the arguments I'm hearing are about basic infrastructure and also about aesthetics and a feel and a vibe. And for me, I think that there's 2 issues. A, I don't think it's appropriate to borrow money just to maintain and upgrade, just to maintain and to fix basic infrastructure. It's one thing to borrow money to make pipes way bigger when we need those. I don't think it's okay to borrow money just to fix a road that needs fixing. I think that should be coming from capital tax or grants or other sources. And so I'm not comfortable with the revenue source we do for this. And also, I think if this is an infrastructure conversation, then we don't have enough information about what is the condition of the space, what are the other alternatives other than ripping up the road and replace the pipes while we're in there. And for me, I don't want to do it in 2020, but also I can't support this motion because I'm not fundamentally opposed to it in 2021. But I think if we are going to say it's in 2021, then we should be asking for more information than we have available to us today to say that. So I think if this does get moved forward to 2021, again, I'd be open to having that. That should be a conversation we're having early in the new year after we've gotten more more information about that road.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Just a question for administration. So this motion is for phase 4, but 4A is also included in that. I would imagine that there would be savings in bundling 2 portions of road and probably a higher cost later on to just go in and try to save the intersection, I guess, where it's going to cross. Are there bundling savings here?
Thank you, Mayor Given. We did look into that, and there are some savings. We're estimating them to be somewhat negligible, though. It's largely the mobilization costs of getting the equipment there, which we're equating to around 1% of the project.
Okay, and thank you for that. I don't think I can support either motion at this time. For me, what it would take is, I think, to do it all. Just rip the Band-Aid off if we're going to do it, and in 2021. I just new to the Downtown Association Board. They just surveyed all of the businesses downtown. Over 75% of the businesses said we want it to happen, but not this year. And so they are hoping for 2 years so that they can be ready. A lot of the retailers have already purchased all their inventory for the winter time and for the summer. We don't want to inconvenience them in that way. It's a very simple conversation to have with Wendy Bosch. The Downtown Association's advice on this is to not proceed as well. I can actually get behind this now that I understand a little bit about the dividend shares. To do that road is, for my calculations, just under $2.5 million is a pretty cheap chunk of road, although we're going to be paying for it through interest rates and other stuff like that. I know I don't feel good about borrowing for roads. I've always said that. It's something that in 5 years you're going to be patching and repairing, so any perceived gains are actually going to be used towards patching and fixing and repairing curbings, like snow removal, all that other stuff. So it's all going to go into that. So for all those reasons, I don't think I can support either. But if somebody wants to come forward with a 4 and 4A for 2021, and we can debate that, I think I can get behind that perhaps.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. I'll just enter to say, so we're speaking to the amendment. I would encourage Council to support the original timeline and to not support the 2021 amendment for a couple of reasons. And the most important is the fact that every year that goes by, we lose expertise. We currently have a contractor who really learned a lot, and we have that expertise within our organization of staff members who served on the first couple phases of this program. We have delayed a year, and I have no doubt that there are some people that wouldn't be returning, and there will be more of those people in the future. I think our downtown will not be well served by trying to restart this project 3 years from the last time that we did it. There is a significant amount of knowledge that was hard-earned in delivering this project the first couple times around. And the longer gap we have between the conclusion of that first go-around and the next time around, I think we start to lose that. People have to be re-educated on how to deal with this type of infrastructure. And if we think, well, they're professionals, they should just know, that's maybe what we would have thought the first time around. But it's obvious that as an organization and as the contractor, we learned a lot about how to do it. My concern is that each year that we push this out, we start to lose some of that efficiency and effectiveness, which will have worse repercussions for downtown and downtown businesses than going ahead earlier. So I would encourage Council to support going ahead with the 2020 and to defeat the 2021 amendment. And further, on the concept of doing all or none of it at the stage, I absolutely could support a Phase 4A follow-on motion in addition. But I think the bare minimum for me is to continue that linear section. Again, we heard specifically from the Downtown Association that they're looking for consistency. Council received a letter from the association that specifically referenced that. And so if there was something that I was concerned about as a primary consideration, would be delivering that consistency along this major route in our community, in addition to the subsurface infrastructure. And finally, when it comes to the borrowing portion, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, how could we reduce the borrowing? And I would be supportive of using capital tax for some portion of the project. I think that's not an unreasonable consideration if that was a follow-up motion. But I would reflect that a lot of this cost, particularly the Aquaterra assets, are long-lived assets that are actually very appropriate to borrow for. They are things that likely have a longer than 40-year lifespan. And so it is absolutely not unreasonable to borrow for that portion. I can absolutely agree that, for typical asphalt, maybe not the right thing to borrow for, but certainly this project contemplates a number of very long-lived assets that are appropriate to have a debenture on. Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I won't be able to support this motion. I think 2020, if we're doing this for downtown, they're saying they don't want to do it. I don't know why we'd want to be going against the flow of our own retailers in a year where they're saying, please don't do it. I really agree with Councillor Bressy's comments as well. There's nothing vertical going to happen on these two blocks. We've got opportunities scattered all over downtown right now for us to go vertical that we've already put the pipe in the ground. And so I feel like we're just going to put a $500,000 burden a year on our taxes and extra interest and carrying costs that we're not going to see any return on. So we're asking the community to take another 0.5% tax hit potentially on this, just so that we can say we did it sooner. As far as the expertise that Mayor Gibbons alluding to, I don't agree with that at all. I think when you award an RFP, the company that's accepting that RFP knows fully what they're getting into. I have to believe that we also have expertise of engineering that was through this project. the city and the downtowners are way ahead of where they were the first phase. The downtowners are very engaged in this process now. They've learned a lot in this process too. So I think if we're worrying about one or two gentlemen maybe you're not being around in a couple of years, I think that's a little bit out of our control. One of those gentlemen could leave tomorrow and retire or get transferred to another place. So I think if we're hinging on expertise, I think that's a little soft. And for me, I don't see how doing 2020, how we're doing our downtown association any favors when they're saying, please don't. So if we're not listening to our customers, again, back to the economic development that I maybe went a little bit too far with yesterday, if we're listening to our customers, they're saying, please don't do this. So why would we do it at a time when they're asking us not to?
Okay, thanks, Councillor Platt. Councillor Clayton? Okay, Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much. I'm going to echo very much the sentiments of Councillor Platt. I know that the mayor referenced it'll be 3 years. It will be about 3 years. But if we are engaging in the process early on, we can actually build up the expertise or retain the expertise that's around, not only in their city but also within the groups that would tender and bid on this type of project. Still, again, I can't support it. Thank you.
So reminding everyone that right now we're on the amendment for 2021. Councillor Palat.
Sorry, Mayor Gibbon, I just wanted to add one other thing. I know there's lots of conversation times about what the development community would do. And I can say from the development community, you wouldn't develop $35 million worth of product and not have any returns at this point and just keep going. You wouldn't see a developer put a phase on of 100 lots and not sell a lot and keep throwing another 100 lot phase, another 100 lot phase. We continue to throw money at this project and we haven't seen the results we need to see. And I'm sorry I didn't say that earlier when I mic'd in, but that's something that really resonates with me. We need to see a return of an investment before we continually just keep doubling down on something that we haven't seen a return on yet.
Thanks, Councillor Platt. Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, Will Mergen. I quite agree with the Bill, what he put it up, and also, agree with Wade. I'm thinking if we do it till 20 or leave it till 23 for next council, because it wouldn't. Not going to make a difference. In downturn of the economy, we might get better price. In 20 or 21 is not going to be far because I don't think economy going to move that far ahead. Either way, I'm okay, but my question is, are we going to do just 4 in 1 year, or are we going to do both in 1 year? That's the other question downtown have. They don't want to do same time those both in one term.
So, yeah, Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. If I may just speak to the original motion, not the amendment, for a moment. I did start with 4 because, as we saw yesterday, we were getting a lot of splitting out of the motions, and I thought that would likely happen with this. I do plan to follow with 4A if 4 passes. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion that we're discussing right now is Councillor Clayton's amendment to say 2021 instead of 2020. That's what we're going to vote on next. The original motion after that is just on phase 4. People could make subsequent motions on phase 4A. So that could happen after. Councillor Friesen's motion is specific to just phase 4. I'll just pop in to say that this is a case of core infrastructure, absolutely. We've heard from administration. Council was circulated on detailed information about condition of the infrastructure, which specifically identified that it is in poor condition. So we may not have that on the screen here. I know that package that was circulated to council is probably in administration's email somewhere, and so I'm sure they could pull it up on screen if we felt that was necessary, but council was circulated on that. This is probably the one of the most detailed infrastructure assessments of a previously built up area that we've undertaken in our city. This council has seen that, the past council has seen that. So in terms of what is the condition of the stuff and does it need replacing, I think that's been well established. And I would just sort of observe that this is a bit different than greenfield development because we have revenue coming in from this area, and it's about what sort of investments do you need to make to maintain that asset. It's different. We aren't selling lots. You don't put in something here and hope to get something new. Absolutely, the goal of the city should be to increase the value of the assets in the downtown, perhaps encourage new development for sure. I believe that, and I've spoken strongly about that. But this isn't exactly analogous to new development where you put in an asset and get a return. These are tax-paying properties that are returning revenue to the city today. And it's about a question of how much investment they have been paying taxes for the last 50 years and how much investment has gone to support those businesses in terms of the assets that they utilize. I'd encourage council to support this. Everybody knows I've been strongly in support of this the entire time on council. And I believe 2020 is the appropriate year because I think that that will have, I think that there is not a year where they will have no impact on the businesses. We need to acknowledge the fact that there will always be an impact on the businesses. And I have a strong sense that you will not get a year where everybody's business says, yes, please do it this year. That just is not practical and is not going to happen. I would encourage council to, as Councillor Thiessen said, rip the Band-Aid. We need to do this work at some stage. It will come with inconvenience to the broader community who travels through downtown and the thousands of people who travel through that street. And it will come as an inconvenience to the businesses in any year that it's completed. Better to get that done sooner, have the infrastructure delivered sooner, and have the return to the city in terms of the asset transfer and revenue happen sooner, in my view. Councillor Bressie.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. I do want to respectfully push back on something you said, and that is that council's been circulated on the information we need for this. And I disagree in terms of, I do my homework, and last night I actually reviewed all the information that I find on that. I think I've reviewed all the information that we circulated. I still can't tell you what our alternatives to doing this full downtown is next year. I think that we've got good reason to believe that these pipes might last us a couple more decades there. I have no idea what it would take to make sure the roads last us a couple decades, short of doing this very expensive debt-funded project to replace it. And so, yeah, I've got condition assessments back from the very first time that this was contemplated, back before I was even on council. I read that yesterday, and it tells me what the surface is like. It doesn't really tell me what the base and the sub-base is like. And yeah, I've got some inclinations about what those look like, but we've heard today we have no idea what it would cost to do just rehab on the road. And so respectfully, I still don't feel that I do have what I need to know what alternatives there are to borrowing millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to do this, to replace pipe that could conceivably last us a couple decades. I'm open again to doing this project, but for me it needs to be based on clear infrastructure repair priorities, and I haven't had that case made to me yet.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Reverend. Just a question for administration. If hopefully Councillor Friesen's motions gets defeated, because I'm not in support of it, and we wanted to have a conversation in April of next year, which I think is the more appropriate time to be having this conversation about capital of this magnitude, is that something we could be having a conversation in April, and council making a decision then that yes, we will be going ahead. It will impact our 21 budget, but giving us a lot more time to have the conversation start in April. So by the time we get to this time next year, we're fully ready to go in 2021. I know we don't normally defer this to budget. I just think this is a little bit last. I appreciate we're working on this, and it's not that it's last minute. We knew this was coming. I just feel like this is an April conversation, not a November conversation. I'm just wondering what administration's thoughts are on having it happen a little bit in the spring of 2020 doesn't happen.
So there's probably a city manager perspective on that, or a corporate services perspective in terms of sort of mill rates. But Mr. City Manager?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will provide a little bit more information to Councillor Bressie's first question. So we're hearing a lot about when the pipes are going to collapse. Okay, why are we doing this? Is to increase capacity in the system to support higher densities. That's the ultimate goal. So the next question is, okay, why we need to do this? Infrastructure is old. The road can be replaced or maintained easily, much easier than the hard infrastructure, water, sewer, and storm. Those are very old pipes. I believe they're like 60 years old. There is a lot of research around the world about pipes in this type of soils, this type of weather. However, there is no, it's all statistical calculations and research in terms of when the pipes may collapse. So you have pipes in, the old Rome, installed by the Romans that lasted for 500 years, and they're still in use, transporting water. So nobody knows really when the pipes are going to collapse. However, we have statistical analysis across North America and Scandinavia I was reviewing about, 100 years, 80 to 100 years is the time when those VCT, the vitrified Clyde tail pipes may start collapsing. And we have asset management analysis from Aquaterra about cracking. That is the initial signs of really, severe deterioration of the pipes. So we're entering into a zone, 60, 70 years old on the infrastructure that is more dangerous. So it's really recommended to perform a change on those pipes and at the same time increase capacity. So I hope that clarifies a little bit your question, why or when we need to do this. So we're entering into that zone. Those pipes will last another 10 years, yes, but may collapse into or tomorrow. Nobody really knows around the world. In terms of the road, as Matt mentioned, the PQI analysis, the pavement quality index, is rated poor. I don't have the number in front of me right now, but probably is below 60. That is a poor condition. So it's time to do a treatment on the road. As you are aware, we have different treatments from crack sealing to overlays to full depth reclamation to full road reconstruction. I don't remember the last time we did a full road reconstruction in that area, probably many years ago. So for a road like that, the lifespan is about 20 years. So probably it's time to go ahead with another full road reconstruction. If we're going to open the road to that level, that we need to excavate about almost a meter down, we're approaching, in terms of savings, a good opportunity to bundle everything and to replace the whole infrastructure. So I hope that provides a little bit more clarity in the analysis about why it's the right time to do this in the very near future, if not in 2020. And yeah, process for April. We can have a conversation. Remember, we need to fix the mill rate by April. So I would suggest that sooner than that would be ideal, so we can have some definitions. Although in order to prepare tenders and all the packages, we would prefer to have definitions before the end of the year. So January, we can put the tender out. The design is completed. This is a shovel-ready project. But in order to provide a proper tendering process would be January, early February, to have shovels in the ground in May, as soon as the frost is out of the ground.
And my intent, sorry, wasn't to affect this. I'm not supporting 2020. My hope is that we're not supporting 2020. My question was more, if we don't support 2020, could we have this conversation in April about doing it in 2021? Because the reason I want to have it sooner and that we can put some certainty is if we're going to go ahead with it in 2021, I'd like the retailers to find out before December 1st. Some of them are ordering inventory for their future summer. So if we had that conversation next spring and we were doing it in 2021, we're not having these downtowners potentially ordering inventory that they might not have ordered. And that's why I'd rather see us have this. I'm just wondering, though, for process, could council make that decision in April, and knowing that it just hits the funded list when we come to budget in 2021?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, absolutely. If the intent is to proceed in 2021, April 2020 is okay. We have plenty of time. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. This is a question for administration. I don't know if you can answer it, maybe if I knew we were going to get into this round of debate. But for the assessment value of the properties in the downtown area affected by phases 1 to 3, what kind of increase in our assessment value, I guess total or ballpark, did the city receive in gains from that work? I'm not talking specifically about growth, just talking about the actual assessment value based on our infrastructure improvements.
Director Walker.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So I don't have that detail in front of me. I would suspect that the impact would have been minimal.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. I don't see anybody else in the queue on Councillor Clayton's amendment. That being the case, then I would go to Councillor Clayton to close.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I just want to make council aware of the intent of this motion. It's a bit of a safeguard. If you are or aren't prepared for this project to happen, I still think that we need this time, and to pass this motion to have it put to 2021 allows us this opportunity to discuss what the implications, the alternatives for the process. My concern is that, as it was mentioned, there are retailers that are looking to move downtown if this project happens. Not permanently, but temporary. So they need to look for other space. They need to be prepared for, as mentioned, their inventory for 2020. A majority of the people that answered the downtown survey said they don't want it in 2021. Regardless of the fact that we think that it's good timing with certain staff, is it not there to benefit the people that are downtown? And if it is, why would we force it when they don't want it? So I think that we need to be, there may be concern that this, if it goes to 2021, we're heading into an election year, and that puts some people in an uncomfortable position. However, the people that it most impacts want it in 2021, not in 2020. So regardless if you support the project, I think that you need to safeguard for the time frame and support the 2021 date. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton, for that close on your amendment. So we'll vote on Councillor Clayton's amendment to change the year from 2020 to 2021. Please vote on the amendment. Thank you. That motion does carry. So we're back to Councillor Friesen's main motion as amended to approve the Downtown Phase 4 project for 2021. Any discussion or debate on that motion? I don't see anybody in the queue, so I go to Councillor Friesen to close. Oh, Councillor Clayton?
Sorry. I say kudos to some of my fellow councillors. Originally, I was in support of this. I'm not in support of this project. I think that there was very good points brought up that why we did Phase 3, why we did Phase 1 and 2. I don't think that Phase 4 is going to bring economic development. I don't think that it's going to, in this time frame, going to do anything other than make the streets look good. We don't know for sure. Nobody has a crystal ball that these pipes need to be replaced in the next 2 years. I think that overall, it'll be a nice to have project some point. I'm just not prepared to put the tax implications on the entire city for a project that really is a nice to have for a small group of people. So I won't be supporting the overall motion.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm going to be voting no against this motion, but I'm not fundamentally opposed to doing it in 2021. Apparently, I've got some work to do in terms of, we heard some information today that's different than what I heard last year, and I don't know if there's been new information. I don't know if there's been a professional reassessment of the information we heard. Most likely is that somehow I've misunderstood as possible too, but I'm hearing different than I heard last year. And so I'm not fundamentally opposed to doing this in 2021. However, I strongly believe that we cannot be making this decision in November come budget time. And what I would absolutely hate to see happen is council says, yes, we're going to approve this in 2021 because some of us are thinking, yeah, we could go either way in 2021. It would show up in the budget. And then we get to next budget deliberations and it ends up getting removed from the budget. I think that would be absolutely not the good way to do this course. I think that, as was alluded to, we should be having this conversation in the spring of 2020. We should be having a vote. We should be having a conversation in the spring of 2020, and we should be committing to positions well before this time next year. And I'm prepared to do that, but I think it would be better to leave this out of the budget and then add it back in if that's so the will of council. So again, not fundamentally opposed to it in 2021, but I don't think now is the time to be putting it in our budget.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. I'll speak in support of the motion. Would have preferred to see it go ahead in 2020, as I made obvious. I will support it going forward in 2021. I think I heard council members specifically say that they thought that the retailers impacted by this needed advance notice. I can't think of better advance notice than this year informing them that a couple of years down the road there's going to be a project that is going to impact them. We can't give them better notice. In fact, delaying it to the spring delays the amount of notice that we could give them to make alternate arrangements. So if you're in support of allowing the retailers to get that advance notice, the right decision is to make the decision now, and then not to relitigate it again a year from now. We've done that on a few other items. That's council's prerogative. We absolutely can do that. When we make a decision, and especially one that impacts so many members of the community, then this would be an example of one that we would probably want to stick with. But I would submit that this is the best way to give all of those impacted lots of advance notice. If council makes this decision go forward, then there's no need to delay decision making to the spring, because we have served the purpose of giving them lots of advance notice here. The other thing that I would suggest to council members is twofold, that at some point, we heard from administration, we will have to do some amount of road work there. The largest number of people that will be impacted by the construction project and by the benefits of the construction project actually will be the people who drive through downtown. Everybody that lives on the east side and works on the west side are the largest volume of people that will be impacted by the project. So when we talk about a nice to have, yes, it will be nice aesthetics, and yes, it will benefit downtown businesses. I absolutely believe that. But the largest number of people that will notice the improved infrastructure are the entire east side of the city who travel through this on a daily basis going to work. And so I think that in terms of who benefits from this, it isn't we're doing it for a couple of businesses downtown. We're improving core infrastructure for the public who drive through there, and for all the residents who walk to their bank, who walk to the grocery store, who park their cars on the street and go into any of the businesses. It's not just for the businesses, it's actually for the residents who use those businesses that will benefit from it. So I just make those observations in support of the overall project and in support of making the decision now. If we wish to give the retailers notice, the best way to do that is to make the decision now, and they have lots of time to plan. Councillor Thiessen?
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I'm going to blame all my next comments on Councillor Bressie because I think I got his cold and it's clogging up my brain. I'm actually going to vote in support of this. That being said, I think the project needs to go ahead in 2021. I agree with Councillor Bressie and other members of council that that this isn't going to have a significant impact on that street. But I've given it careful thought and consideration over the years, had many conversations, and I'm fairly certain, without being a road expert, that when we actually get to the point where we do the core drilling to check what the base and the sub-base is actually looking like, we're going to find that we're probably looking at at least a $5 million job going forward. Do I like the fact that we're going to potentially, for 3 years, increase our taxes by just under 1%? No, but I do see it coming forward in the years that we get the Aquaterra dividends, that it will kind of pay for itself, not entirely. I'm kind of back and forth on how we pay for this, whether or not we go for the full share or for the Aquaterra putting in the upfront money, the $4.5 million that was expressed before. But after having a bit more of an understanding of how the dividends could pay for it, this is potentially new cash that we don't even have to imagine that we're getting new cash. We'll just say, hey, this is going to improve our core infrastructure there. So for all those reasons and this darned cold, I'm going to vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. This is a project that I'd like to see fulfilled, and I'm in favor of this project. When we looked at the road construction, when they did the tests way back in the day, they found that there was water leakage as well as sewer leakage in those pipes. So that could be possibly some of the concerns with the road. And so I want that looked after. And the sidewalk program, I find it very difficult when the person's taking a elderly person or somebody that's quite young in a carriage down some of those sidewalks. There's obstacles like street lights and poles and stuff like that. And that if we could get rid of that and make it a more walkable downtown, that would probably enhance the business as well down there. So I'm totally in favor of this.
Okay, thanks, Councillor O'Toole. Councillor Bressie.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. Just two comments. One is just there are considerations here in terms of basic infrastructure, and I think that's fair enough. Decide what you're going to decide there. I think there also are considerations of just the look of downtown, and I know that when I talk to the Downtown Association, the big thing I hear from them is we need to finish the work you need started. It's definitely not an infrastructure argument that's being made there. And I want to address that in terms of, I do think that it is really nice and on some level important to have our whole downtown feel like a complete modern core. At the same time, we've also got other huge needs in the city. The biggest one in my mind is affordable housing. How are we going to tackle that? We've got community safety. We've got people that are feeling less and less safe in our community. I don't think they actually are less and less safe, but they're feeling less and less safe, and that's a huge priority to me. We've got a leisure center and a school on the north end of the city that something's going to need to be done to replace them. For me, there are, as much as it is, I don't think it's a nice to have. I actually do think it is a need to have a modern, nice looking, approachable downtown. I just think there's bigger needs in the city that I'm worried that borrowing for this project gets in the way of. So for the side of your brain that's thinking about this from a non-basic infrastructure brain, please consider other needs we have in the city. The other thing I'd say to councillors is I really, really, really think that if this is going to be put in the budget now, that it probably needs to stay in the budget now. So if you're somebody who's kind of on the fence saying, yeah, I might change my mind coming next November, please vote no today. Please defeat this today. I hope that councillors don't put this in the budget and then take it in. So I hope that this is, people that are supporting this really are ready to stand behind that. It's not hey, I want to make sure that we're having another conversation come next November.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Then I'll go to Councillor Friesen to close.
Thank you. I heard a lot of comments about, well, this is something we should be talking about in the spring. We should have been talking about this last spring. This is no surprise to anyone sitting around this chamber that we're talking about this yet again. And I think you're absolutely right. Let's finish it today. Let's move forward with it because the Downtown Association wants it. We've asked for information all year long. We've gotten information all year long. The only new information that we heard today, and really the only further information to have received, because we've been getting information all year long, was the information about the dividend impact. And it's, yes, it's making downtown pretty, whatever, but this is truly an improvement to our underlying infrastructure as well. It adds value to our assets that we can transfer, that will bring a dividend to us, that after our dividend has actually paid for downtown, it will continue to pay for future projects for generations to come. And for those reasons, I would really encourage my colleagues to say, yes, let's move forward with this. If we aren't going to care for our 70 and 80-year-old infrastructure, when are we going to care for it? This is an ideal time to do so when we have put a lot of money into downtown already. Let's finish it off instead of leaving that few blocks as the poor cousin of downtown. Let's get that cohesive looking downtown. While we're there, let's care for our aging infrastructure. Let's transfer an asset that can give us dividends in perpetuity. As we heard, it increases our assets in the company, in Aquaterra, and therefore significantly increases our dividends, such that it not only offsets the cost after a couple of years of downtown, but once the cost is recovered for downtown, it continues to provide dividends. And it does show that we are a city that cares for our aging infrastructure as well as we care for new development. We can't look one way without looking the other way, or parts of our city will crumble. Let's support this and get going for 2021 on the downtown construction. Thank you.
21. So it's been amended to, so we're voting on the main motion as amended. So what we're voting on, so the amendment passed. So the motion is to approve the downtown construction project, phase 4 for 2021. That's what we're voting on. Okay? So the motion is, does council approve adding the downtown phase 4 project to 2021? Okay, so I'll call for the vote on that motion. Please vote.
Sorry.
We'll just count that. We had a call from a council member to cancel that vote as they'd cast it incorrectly. So we'll call for the vote again. A vote in favor means adding the downtown Phase 4 project to the capital budget for 2021. Please vote. Okay, thank you. That motion does carry. I see Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I want to make a follow-up motion to that, and that is to direct administration to identify potential non-debt sources for the road replacement components of this project. And just to speak to that, I think there's a good argument to be, I think there's an argument, not necessarily what I agree with, but an argument I can definitely see to borrow for replacing the pipes in this ground. I think there's a very good argument to be made to borrow for the community enhancement elements of this project, such as tree cells and nice surface treatments. I think that's very appropriate area to borrow for. I don't think it is appropriate to borrow just to replace roads. So I think that portion of the project, I feel very strongly, shouldn't come from general debentures. But I'd love to see whether we see it early in the year or whether we see it come next budget time. I'd really like to see administration come to us with sources that aren't debt for the road portions of this project.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. Take that motion as in order. The one thing that I would observe is actually related to what you said. I think that there is the one risk of having that come forward at budget next year might be somebody's inclination to change their perspective on doing the project or not based on how administration presents the funding. So I guess I just offer that caution. It would suggest that we made a decision about whether the project goes ahead. I think the intent of Councillor Bressie's motion would be to direct administration to present some alternatives in terms of how the project is funded.
Well, and if council feels there's some risk with that, then maybe there is some, maybe we don't ask for this to come back to next budget. Maybe we ask for this to come to the appropriate standing committee earlier in the year. Or I'm open to friendly amendments if council feels that is risky for that reason. I'm open to friendly amendments or real amendments about putting a timeline on this if we don't want to wait till next budget.
Open for discussion and debate while we think about that. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I would hope you'd amend it to maybe have like an April 1 day. I think that would probably give administration enough time to do it. I'm definitely in support of this motion. I think this is something that hasn't sat well for me either. I can appreciate that this is stuff, but I'm not somebody that ever wants to see us ever, hopefully in the future, ever again borrow for this kind of stuff. I think this is a capital item, and I think if we were worried about downtown, I guess 10 years ago, I wish we were putting money away because we thought it was a project. I don't think it's fair to put this kind of debt on the entire community. So I'll be making a subsequent motion as well about this, but I will be supporting this one as well.
So Platt, I think the city manager is asking about what information administration might have today. Think about corporate services and our engineering folks, if they had some sense of what that might look like, what portion would be reasonable to come from capital tax rather than from debt servicing or from debenture borrowing. If there is some sense of that might be used. My point is it may be useful for council to sort stuff out and make a determination earlier rather than waiting later to do that. So people that have their thinking caps on. Councillor Thiessen.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Given, and thank you for your thoughtful motion, Councillor Bressie. I think this is actually the roads are going to be a pretty small portion of it. I think the largest cost and expense to the entire downtown is the paving stones, the labor that goes into hauling, storing, cutting, placing, like purchasing. Like I think that's probably the largest impact on our whole downtown infrastructure, except maybe hauling away dirt. But I think it can be done, and I think I see our city manager going back and forth, as the mayor alluded to earlier. He's walking behind me right now. He's just making sure that we can find those available funds, and it may mean a restructure of our capital plan. But I'm with Councillor Platt too. I want to see all the details on as soon as possible, like in April 1 or whenever, and I'd be good with that. If someone wants to amend your motion, I don't know if it needs to be. I think administration can hear us loud and clear. But the sooner the better. I don't want to have this discussion at budget either. I want to be as educated going forward, especially considering I've been so outspoken against this for so long. I want to be able to justify the swap of my vote.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. And just so council does know, so that the city manager, just in terms of first checked, and I think the answer from the team was it could be a number of different sources. my understanding of Councillor Bressy's intent was to say what amount would be reasonable to reflect from some source other than borrowing. What are long-lived assets and what are short-lived assets? And what amount would be reasonable to reflect as coming from short-lived assets? Is that a fair representation?
Yeah, and my other intention of this motion is I'd also like to get not just that amount, but also what's the recommended funding source from administration. So what amount are we not going to be borrowing, but also what will be the recommended funding source of that?
Okay. Councillor Friesen?
Thank you. I'm actually going to be opposing this motion. I think that this is a motion to direct administration to do their jobs. I have confidence in administration to find funding sources that are the best for our city and that are the best for our residents and taxpayers. And part of that is exploring funding sources, accessing grants, accessing other streams in order to complete whatever projects we put forward. And I just don't think that this is a necessary motion at all. I oppose it. Administration does this work anyway, and I'm confident they will do it for this. And the risk that Mayor Given mentioned, I think, is a real one. If we're not ready to go with this project, and we hem and haw about it for another year, we can cut the head off a chicken with a butter knife, but who wants to?
That is a new metaphor for me. I'm assuming that you're suggesting an axe is better because it cuts cleanly and okay. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'm going to make an amendment to your motion, Councillor Bressley, and mine's a little bit more specific because I think for me it comes back to some of the stuff I hear we've been talking about, and I think where this money could come from potentially to me is capital tax. So my motion is going to be that we ask administration to bring a report back to the appropriate standing committee of what the roads and sidewalks replacement would have cost for phase 4. It's specific that I want to know what we would have paid if this was anywhere else in town. If this was a sidewalk in Swanhaven, we would have paid for it with capital. If this was a road in Avondale, we would have paid within capital. And this, I just want the time for administration because I know they're trying to work on it here, but for them to come back and say these 2 blocks of road would have cost this much money had they been in our normal road overlay program or normal sidewalk replacement program. Because to me, that's where I would like to advocate on that point of saying those should be coming out of capital tax. So it kind of maybe gets to Councillor Bressy's point. But to me, we put a lot of money away every year for road and sidewalk rehab. This area of town should be no different. And so that's why I would like to see reports specifically on the dollar amounts of that amount of area. We can have a conversation at that time of whether we think it should be capital or not, or it should be debt. But I think that's good information for us to understand of what the physical cost would have been to replace those assets regardless.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor. The amendment is, I'm understanding to be substantially different than, like typically amendment is 2020 to 2021, like that, specific. You've changed, I think, the nature of the motion. If it fails, then by all means, or if there's some other motion, some other business arising. I do have the Director of Infrastructure and Economic Development in the queue, and the City Manager got his workout going back and forth, but suggests that he does have some information for us. So we'll go to Director Glavin.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just with respect to roads and any of our pedestrian links, so that be sidewalks or pavement, we don't use capital tax. It's part of our capital program, but they're funded with grant funding. So for example, the pedestrian links, we use 100% of that comes from our gas tax grant. And then in our road portion, the vast majority of the road portion also comes from a combination of gas tax grant and MSI. We do have a small portion of capital tax, about $100,000 that was put in over the next 3 years. But aside from that, it's grant funding.
Okay, so I guess to Mayor Given's point, for start off with, I'll withdraw my motion for now until this one's done, and I'll make it afterwards because you're right, it is a pretty big amendment to the original motion. To the point that Director Glavin just made, that's fine. I appreciate that it come from a different source is what I thought. I guess what I'd like to know is what would that have cost regardless? Because when we're talking about Councillor Bressy's motion of we're trying to identify funding sources, if we would have put MSI towards replacing a sidewalk in Swanhaven, why would we not be putting MSI towards this project and not putting it all on debt? And that's my point with this is I don't want to see us put this on debt If this is infrastructure that was supposed to be replaced regardless of the pipes, I don't know why we're treating this area of town differently.
So the city manager has some information from his journey around the council chambers. Mr. City Manager.
I'm doing my training today. Okay, so I got information about the surface assets. So those assets usually can be funded by other sources than borrowing because of the lifespan. Okay? So we're talking assets with a lifespan shorter than 20 years in general. So the total amount for this project is about $9 million. And we're talking full road, including base, so surface, asphalt surface, groundwater base, sub-base, sidewalks, curb and gutter, catch basins, trees, benches, all the surface assets. So there's different sources of funding we can use, include MSI, gas tax fund, and potentially capital tax for some of them. So combination of the three, total amount $9 million for all the surface assets. And of course, if we divert funding to this project, the downtown project, we will need to reconfigure again some other projects as part of capital plan that have been originally funded by a combination of MSI, gas tax, and capital tax to defund that, to move funding to the downtown project.
Thanks for that, Mr. City Manager. We'll go to Councillor Bressie to close, by all means, in the discussion. Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to close too, but I'll just clarify what I'm getting at. I'm not trying to get all of the surface aspects encompassed in this motion. I think that it actually is appropriate. So an example is we've got tree cells and we've got benches that don't exist there. I actually think those are very appropriate to borrow against because that's a new asset that future citizens are going to enjoy. The area I don't feel it is appropriate to borrow for is the specific part of this that is replacing the road and the sub-base. Kind of that stuff that's already there that would need to be replaced anyways. That's the part that, so that's why I'm most specific to the road side of that. Because I'd like there, and I appreciate it might not be a precise science, and I appreciate that administration might not be able to say it was $1,200,062 that would have been set aside to this, but I'd assume, maybe I'm wrong, that there's an approximate amount we could figure out of this is probably what it would have gone just to replace the road and the sub-base, the stuff we would have had to replace anyways. That's the part I'd like to be non-debt funded. The tree cells, which are very expensive and which I actually really support, those are appropriate debt. Benches, things like that, I think should stay with debt.
Mr. City Manager? You're twitching. You look like you wanted to get...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, I want to clarify the borrowing criteria we use, and I'm looking at finance just to be sure I'm saying the right thing. We borrow to match the lifespan of the asset. That's the main criteria. So to borrow, even if it's an expensive asset like a tree cell, but with a very short lifespan, and we're borrowing at 20 years or 30 years potentially, like in this project, that doesn't make sense to borrow and to use borrowing as a source of funding for, let's say, a 10-year asset with an amortization period of 30 years. So in those assets, we can pull different sources like MSI or gas tax or even capital tax for assets with a very short or relatively short lifespan and use borrowing as the main source of funding when we can match the life of the asset with the amortization period. Did I say it right? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, and thanks for clarifying your intent, Councillor Bressie. I don't see anybody else. Thank you. I'll say so. Ditto to what Councillor Friesen said. I mean, ultimately, I think Council decides at a high level, and administration recommends the best way to do that in the context of the city's very complex and complicated overall financial structure. Administration understands. Council uses very blunt levers sometimes about tax rates, and that may require administration to make other changes to the capital plan. So if we got into saying, well, specifically we want this tiny little piece of our puzzle to look like this, and then later on we said some other big piece of our puzzle we want to do that, we need to leave them the latitude to make those technical adjustments. So I support the point that Councillor Friesen said, that we have a professional administration, that part is their job. We decide what we want to, we decide the big chunks, and there are some technical pieces that are, I think, more directly administration's area. So I'm agreeing with Councillor Friesen on all those points that she made. I don't see anybody else in the queue, so we'll go to Councillor Bressy to close.
Great. Well, and I'm hope it's change Councillor Friesen's and Mayor Given's mind. And just something that I point out is, in the past, in phase 3, we did fully fund through debt, is my recollection. And I wasn't on council, but my understanding is other phases were fully funded through that as well. And I think that I think that when we did phase 3 and we funded through debt, I think that I want council to change its financial strategy on this. And I think it's appropriate to signal to administration we've got a specific financial strategy we want to do to achieve what is an extraordinary project. This isn't a normal project for us. I think it is an extraordinary project. I think it's appropriate for us to signal what financial strategies we want out of this project. We want to achieve this project with. So I hope council will support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Bressy. So Councillor Bressy's motion was to, maybe we can have the motion reread. Actually.
Moved by Councillor Bressy to direct administration to research alternatives for non-debt funding for the downtown Phase 4, inclusive of Aquaterra assets identified in the 2021 budget specific to the road replacement.
Okay, so we're clear on Councillor Bressy's motion of direction to administration. Please vote. The motion does not carry. Is there any other business arising? Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'll do my motion now instead of an amendment. My motion will be that administration bring back reports to the appropriate standing committee for what the replacement of the roads and sidewalks would have been for Phase 4.
Okay. Councillor Plott, do you want that at a standing committee? I believe that information may exist. Is that a standing committee report? Is it emailed out to council? What's the...
as long as we were to receive the information, I guess for me, it doesn't need to be a lengthy report. I just think that's important information for me to decide, and I think it goes to Councillor Bressy's previous motion of, that will probably help us as council and potentially administration start navigating of where the funding sources could come from.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Plott. Councillor, before I go to Councillor Bressy, I see the Infrastructure and Economic Development Director, Dr. Glavin.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Yes, we will be able to provide that information. We just need to ensure that the caveat to that is that the costs that we have right now assume we do the entire project, so you can't take them out and assume those would be the costs if we only did those specific parts. But if it's just to identify what funding would go where for borrowing purposes versus capital tax, we have that data that we can share.
Can you just clarify? I think what I heard you say, it's not a straight line to say, if we only wanted to replace the sidewalks here, that they would cost this much per unit. We're getting a better unit cost as a, sorry, the unit cost that we have now is as a part of the overall $16 million project. The unit cost may be different if it was a straight sidewalk replacement. Is that?
That's correct.
Any other discussion or debate on Councillor Plott's motion? I'll say that I'm not going to support the motion because I'm not sure of the utility of it. I think it won't be difficult for administration to present, and I think they have in the past, about what portion of the project is related to different segments of it, subsurface, surface, and everything else. I'm not sure how it aids our decision making, and so I won't support the motion. I don't see anybody else in the queue, so we'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Mayor Green. We'll try one other one here, and it kind of goes, I'd like to make a motion that Phase 4 and 4A conversations are brought back to Council in April of 2020 for approval for the 2021 season. My intent with that is that we do have this conversation in April, and we approve it in April, so that this doesn't come back in November of next year at a budget. I'd like to have this decision made in the spring of next year, so that we are there. I think that the risk, and to Councillor Friesen's point, I don't see me flip-flopping, but lots can happen between now and then. I'd certainly hate us to see us get all the way to next year at November, and then we flip-flop then, and we've done a real disservice to our downtown and to us as to our council. So I'd rather have this conversation in April of next year, and I think that's a little bit different process, but I feel like if we can, when I asked earlier, it sounds like it can be done. If we can do it in April, let's do it in April. Then we're not discussing this at budget next year. And we also let the retailers know way in advance that this is 100% happening then, instead of having deliberation next November.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Palat. Councillor Bressi.
Great, thank you, Mayor Given. Contrary to past comments I've made, I'll actually be voting against this, and I think I'll trust my colleagues that if they said yes before, that they're not going to change. I hope that they would have voted no to this if they had any chance changing. So I think I'll trust my colleagues that they're committed to their votes, and yeah. So I don't think this is necessary.
Thanks, Councillor Bressi. I don't see anybody else in the queue. I think the effect of the motion would be actually to be create more uncertainty rather than less. I think if council says the phase 4 project has been decided in November of 2019, and you should expect and plan and prepare for it to happen in the summer of 2021, I think that is the most decisive and most notice that we can provide. I think the effect of the motion actually would be to inject more uncertainty rather than to reduce uncertainty. So for that reason, I won't support it. Councillor Plott to close? No. I don't see anybody in the queue. Then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. The motion does not carry. So we are... we are probably at a point where it would be useful for council to stand and have a break. We will take, I'm seeing it's about 10 to, so we'll try to be back for 11 o'clock. Welcome back. We will continue on with our budget referrals. The next one up that council had referred to budget that's on our slides is Sunrise House Youth Emergency Shelter. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. As I indicated, I did want to follow up on the downtown phase 4 with the downtown phase 4A. No, inclusive of Aquaterra assets for 5.3 million. And I would like to suggest that for 2021, knowing now that we're not going to move it for 2020. So
the motion is to approve adding the downtown phase 4A to the 2021 capital budget.
yes, inclusive of Aquaterra assets. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Friesen. Open for discussion and debate. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Can I just have, I know there's been lots of, my apologies, I put most of my intention into trying to understand phases 3 and 4. 4A is the one that goes from Sawridge to Wendy's. I'm just wondering what needs, is this a capacity issue or why we're doing that section? What is this, just aesthetics?
I'm looking to see whether it's going to be the director that's going to answer initially or technical experts that are at the back. Director Glavin? Speak to the scope of phase.
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon. So from a high level here, so if you look at phase 4, 44% of the costs are underground and then 56 above. On phase 4A, 35% are underground, so there's less intensive needs subsurface in phase 4A, so it's a higher percentage of the cost is for the surface treatment. There's just less underground there.
Okay, so I guess I may be in support of this. This kind of goes back the same as last conversation with 4 in general is if this is mostly surface and road repairs, I would hope that this wouldn't be a debt item. That's where I'm struggling with this. If this is mostly road repairs and surface work, I don't know if I could support taking on debt for that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Plott. Open for discussion debate. Anybody else in the queue? Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'll be voting against this, which probably is a surprise. And I think that this actually speaks to one of my big concerns about the downtown project in terms of right now they're doing phase 4. Where does it end? Do we do phase 4A this year? If we do phase 4A, then do we move down to 9th Avenue? Do we do the rest of 101st Avenue? It's just we've got a lot of road downtown now that's still behind the modern look, and we don't have an overall strategy of where does this end? Do we think we're done now for after 2021 for years or decades, or are we going to keep on going? And I think that's a question that we really need to answer before we start adding even more road work here. Of how far are we going to go? What timeline are we going to go? What are we trying to accomplish? And so I'll be voting against this. But I think we should be talking about when is it going to happen and how is it going to happen, and is this the most appropriate next phase?
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. I'll say I agree. Council does need to decide sort of where it ends, and my opinion is that ultimately it ends when council decides not to vote for it. And at a really practical level, the city has a number of master plans and planning documents that are subject to council approval. And so if council approves not to go ahead with a phase or a item in a master plan, we have a Muskogee Park master plan that was adopted by a council that showed totally reconfiguring the parking in Muskogee Park near the pavilion, and has never happened because it has not been a priority and council has not sort of brought that up or supported it. I think the downtown enhancement plan is of a similar nature, and it's up to each individual council to decide what its priorities are. And it's up to each individual council member to vote their heart and sort of their preferences on those different priorities. And so I will support this. And if council decides that it doesn't go ahead, then I think we've decided that that's where this council is going to stop. Some future council may make a different decision about what other areas are priorities. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Just sort of following up with that, this project had 4 phases, and it was a project as is. If there's additional things, those are new projects in my mind. This consisted of exactly what has been executed according at the will of council, and if there's anything new, in my opinion, this project's done. If there's anything new, it's a new project. So that was my only comment. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'm going to say I'm not going to support phase 4A. I think, just having a few more thoughts. I think I was kind of back and forth on it. This is to me, this is a nice to have. This is not a need. It's not going to create any new capacity. It's going to look nice, but to Councillor Bressy's point, and hearing that if phase 4 makes sense to go ahead, phase 4A does nothing but make us look prettier in one area for 4 blocks. And then we can have that conversation next year going, boy, it sure looks weird that 99th has this intersection now and it doesn't have the roads going. So I think we need to stop at 4. I think that's where we should have stopped, or we should stop. I don't think 4A is going to add any extra value to the downtown corridor. And the bigger thing I want to remind you guys is when we close 4A, we're closing the artery of downtown for quite a while. And it's not going to be pretty for downtown merchants. It's one thing to close a little bit of an access one way or another. To close our north-south route through the artery of our downtown is going to be very, very, very challenging to our merchants. So if we thought the original phases were tough, if we do 4A, boy, oh boy, I'm hoping I'm not on that council next term when we deal with those calls, because that will not be fun, because we will watch a significant amount of closures happen in our downtown core for doing 4A, which is a nice to have and not a need. So I can't support it.
Thiessen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. Given I think I came into today going, I might have a cross to bear, but Councillor Palat has convinced me that not to support this at this time. I think this is something that we can move forward with in the future, or a future council can. Right now, it's a $5.3 million cost. It's a small cost, but in comparison to the large scope of the project. But in saying that, I know it's going to look weird, and I know we'll probably, as we get into discussions in April or May, maybe waffle a bit on whether or not we do that as well in 2021. It could be that we just do the work in 2021 for phase 4, and then in 2022, a new council elected says, no, this needs to get done because it just looks so stupid. So for all those reasons right now, I'm just going to say no.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor O'Toole.
Yes, I'll be in support of this. I've been a supporter of this program. Downtown revitalization. It's going to enhance the ability to have more capacity and stuff like that. Everything we've talked about today, and I think this would be like building a new house and not putting baseboards on it. So if you want to talk about it, there you go. So I'm in support.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Councillor Friesen, I don't know if you wish to close.
I will close just very briefly. I think I've made all the points that I wanted to make, and received support in 4, and I would encourage my colleagues to also support 4A. You don't only do the rooms in your home and not vacuum the hallways. You go all directions, and this is our streets are no less important than our avenues. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Friesen. That was the close. The motion is to add the downtown phase 4A project to the 2020 capital budget. Please vote. That motion does not carry. Okay, I think that adds up to 8. I keep having to do that math, but I think I saw all 8 votes ring in. And so we will move on then. I think if that completes all of our downtown project business that had been referred here, our other item was Sunrise House Youth Emergency Shelter. Is there somebody from administration that will refresh council on what this is? Director Manuel.
Absolutely. So this was a referral from committee, and what it was a presentation on a new build to replace the existing Sunrise House. It is expected to be located over the new Kensington neighborhood, and the project at this point involves approximately a $4.5 million facility that is slated to be built. They were hoping to get the project construction underway next summer, and that following that, it frankly would replace their existing facility along with the services they provide there, and provide some additional services such as youth apartments for people that are transitioning from the shelter.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor. Director Manuel, I see Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Thank you, Chris, to update thing. I'd like to move the motion for this fund because they had already arranged a lot of money and they're expecting from, I think, 117,000 for gift kind and 343,000 funds. So I'll move the motion to approve this and the funding coming from strategic fund from our council.
Okay, the council strategic initiatives.
Strategic initiative, yeah.
Okay. Director Manuel had a comment on that.
Yeah, sorry, I just needed to provide a little bit of clarification for you. So the ask that we have in front of us was for $383,000 in cash donation and $117,000 in gift in kind, which is essentially waiving fees related to inspections and permits and those sorts of things. It is important to note that during the presentation, the Sunrise House delegation indicated that they were going to make additional asks to both the county of Grande Prairie and the MD of Greenview. Of the $4.6 million project so far, we understand that approximately land acquisition has been confirmed at $600,000 and a private donation of $1 million. So approximately $1.6 million of the 4.5 has been secured at this point. My advice to council is if we are to fund this piece, that we essentially withhold some of the funding pending the other commitments occurring.
Okay, thanks very much, Director Manuel. I recognize Councillor Palat. Sorry.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'm just curious, do we have, and my apologies, when they presented, did they have a dollar amount that they were asking for from the county and the MD on this project specifically?
Mr. Manuel?
So the capital plan I have in front of me shows sources of capital funding, and it indicates that $750,000 were expected in municipal government funding, and that's divided by 3 municipalities. I guess if you were to divide that out, our portion seems a little bit higher in that $383,000 ask. So I'm anticipating perhaps they are going to increase their ask to the other municipalities as well.
Okay, so I'm going to think about this, but I'm probably going to come back with an amendment. I feel like we got to, again, this is one of those areas where I feel like as much as I want to, and I really do want to help Sunrise Youth Shelter, I do think we have to start having a little bit more conversations with the county and the MD to make sure we're not over contributing to these kind of things, because it is helping the region. So.
Okay. There's a queue. I'll just say that it's not unreasonable, as we've done actually with other motions during this budget discussion, to make this a subject to contributions from our other municipal neighbors. And council has done that on other past projects as well, including Odyssey House Second Stage Shelter. Contribution to that housing project was a subject to contributions from the other municipalities. Councillor Thiessen?
I'm actually going to propose an amendment, and I think it's right in line with Councillor Palat. We're just comparing our own notes. I would, so if Councillor Minhas would allow, I would move that we amend the amount to $250,000 and to be held in trust pending funding coming from our regional partners in the MD and county.
So to amend the amount of cash contribution?
Cash contribution. Now, this is, just to speak to this a bit, I'm not asking to take it all off. I think this is a discussion in another year. I just want to spread it out during that. We have about $500,000 that we set aside, and I think even more than that was set aside later. But I want to make sure that we still have money in our fund and we're not giving it all the way right now. And I also want Sunrise House, I know they've done great work in building their business plan. But I want to see results from that as well, as much as I want to see housing. To just sign over a blank check right now is good, but if we can provide them a letter that says, yeah, you know what, we approved $250,000 funding this year, and you know, go out and get your other funding partners, get them all your ducks in a row, and we'll sign off the check and give it to you. I think that's good. I think this is a priority for our community, considering how young our demographic is, and especially the safety around the current youth emergency shelter. I think it's part of our opportunity that we created as a council to fund projects such as this going forward that will benefit our entire community. I do have a bit of concerns about the location, and other things, considering the moves that we made as a council in eliminating transit. But I also have solutions that are starting to brew in my brain as well. So for right now, I'd feel comfortable with committing $250,000 and just hold that in trust and say, hey, yeah, you know, we've approved this, but go get your other funding.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Just as a practical matter, I'm not sure in trust is necessary. I think sort of that, as we did with, I can't remember whether it was Nighthawk or what other facility we did it with earlier. It's just subject to matching contributions from the other municipalities. That's not uncommon. I think administration just doesn't put anything in the mail until they get confirmation of those other things have been received. But just in terms of recording sort of the words that we put in the record.
For sure. I know that Director Walker and her team, they're just going to throw it in our reserves and collect interest on it until we sign the check over. So it's all good.
Well, it's actually money that's currently in our budget. Yeah. Councillor Bressie.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. Before I make my comment, just a question for you or the recording secretary. So were the amendments amending the amount, what was the amount in the original motion? Three. Okay. A request to either Councillor Thiessen or Mayor Given, there's two intents to your amendment, both to make it contingent and to change the funding amount. Is it possible for us to split those and have, or is it possible for you just to make one of those in your amendment?
Yeah,
I think they're very different.
I appreciate what you're saying. There are two different concepts, one making this contingent upon other support from other municipalities, and one changing the amount, the dollar value. Yeah, I appreciate there's two different ideas that council members are being called to vote on. I think it's reasonable to have, we'll split the amendment and vote on those two parts separately. You don't need to withdraw or make another motion. So we'll take the amendment and we're going to vote on those two portions. Go ahead and turn on your microphone.
Sorry, I just wanted to let Councillor Bressie know that in the original motion, it already has the subject to in there. So we could essentially just take that portion out of Councillor Thiessen's motion and then just change the dollar amount.
I didn't hear Councillor Minhas say subject to other municipal support. Yeah, Councillor Thiessen didn't make the original motion. Councillor Minhas made the original motion. Councillor Thiessen proposed an amendment adding the subject to and changing the dollar value to 250. So Councillor Thiessen, you said additional clarity to your motion?
Yeah, just additional clarity. In fact, I'm in full support of Councillor Minhas's original motion, but I also think that if we just sign this check over, it reduces the amount of work. The gift in kind could actually grow. That's a budgeted amount, and it's based on hypotheticals. Maybe they need $180,000 gift in kind and less cash later on. So this is about like getting the foot in the door. And in future years, I would probably bring back the remainder of the funds as well. But for this year, I want to give them a good kickstart in their fundraising campaign.
Okay, so you're then keeping the intent of your motion to reflect 250,000. Okay, so Councillor Thiessen's motion it does have those two parts, adding the contingent upon support from the county and the MD, and changing the amount to 250. So we will vote on those separately. We'll vote first on the amount. Okay, so we're on Councillor Thiessen's amendment, the first portion of which was to change the amount to 250,000. Discussion and debate on that point.
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon. On the amendment of $250,000, I have some concern about tying that money up for without a specified length of time, and so I don't think I don't think I can amend an amendment, but but I encourage council to defeat this. There's a few other parameters that I'd like to see in this intent. And we can talk about this after, but I just think that I'll talk about them now. I think there needs to be some guidelines. If the other municipal partners don't come in, but maybe we still want to support it. I don't want us earmarking this money for a long period of time, because if the project actually isn't viable, it doesn't make sense to me. So I'd like to see a parameter of timeline. I also, after this motion, I have some other questions. So after this amendment, sorry.
Okay, so we're talking about, is it 250,000 or is it 383 or whatever?
Right. Well, or not. Yeah. So I encourage council to defeat this so we can look at additional parameters. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I really appreciate the intent of Councillor Thiessen's motion. As he stated, I was thinking about making a similar one. I would be in support of it, but in light of what Councillor Clayton is saying, I tend to agree with that. I think we do need to put a line in the sand a little bit. This is council strategic plan funds that we have available to do other things in the community, and if we lock this up and they take years to make a decision, we've in fact kind of locked up our ability to help other organizations or other needs for the community. So I do think it's important that we do put some parameters around time. So hopefully this motion, unfortunately, will be defeated, but we'll resurface with a date attached to it.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Platt. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I just remind council that we'll have opportunity to make other amendments to this before we vote on Councillor Minhas's motion. I'd actually agree that we should have a date on it. I don't think that means that but I think that's before we vote on Councillor Minhas's amendment up, before we vote on other vote on his motion up before we vote on other amendments. I need to see that. I think I might have misunderstood something. So, Councillor Thissen, can you clarify for me just why do you want to decrease this to 250 instead of the 383 requested?
Councillor Thissen.
Thank you very much. Actually, Councillor Bressie, that's why I tried to provide a little bit of context. $250,000 this year. I'm in full support of the program. I don't think we should give it all up this year. I think we can spread it out over a couple of years if we need to. So for me, if it came down to it and supporting Councillor Minhas' motion as it is, I would be in full support of that. I'm just looking to break it out over 20 and 21.
Great. And then can I speak?
Councillor Bressie.
Yeah, and just to speak to that as I can't support this. I can appreciate the idea of breaking it out. If there was a specific motion to actually commit in future years, I might vote in favor of that. But just as a guy who's raised significant money for significant capital projects, specifically for youth, even when you've got a donor who says, I'm going to give you this amount and I might give you amounts of future years, that you don't get to leverage that. You get to leverage committed funds when you go to other donors, when you go to other stakeholders. And I think for us to say we're only giving $250,000 a year, that's all they get to say that they say for other donors. I really feel that we should be contributing the full $500,000 all in, the $383,000 cash. I really feel we should be committing that right now. If there was a motion to break that up over 2 years, might be okay with that, but I can't support a reduction unless we've actually committed to increases in future years. So I'd encourage council to defeat this motion.
Councillor Bressie. Councillor O'Toole.
I can't believe this, but I'm going to take Councillor Bressie's side on this one too. They asked for the money, and that was part of that reasoning for the leverage. And I asked during the break if we could do it in 3 consecutive years, split that money up, and the request was to have a lump sum fund. So it's not going to do them any good if we do it over 3 years. So that's why I'm going to defeat this motion if I can, or vote towards it anyhow.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. Can administration, we had a slide showing how much council had committed out of its strategic initiatives fund compared to how much has actually been expended. Can we have that slide up? Well, the amendment gets to the 250 versus the 380, and so I'm gonna make a point that I support the 383 because I believe from memory that we've actually committed a bunch of funds to undefined uses and haven't spent it. So we have $500,000 for affordable housing, and we haven't spent any of that out of our. I mean, we really have out of our, like we have committed to a bunch of things that are actually undefined. Economic development opportunities is, we heard that a significant amount of that will go to tri-municipal industrial project, but is not necessarily happening. Affordable housing is an undefined thing that I don't think that council has a specific idea. So I think we have some significant flexibility in there. I'm not certain that all of the things that are identified here will come to pass by the conclusion of this council's term, particularly when we don't have a plan for them. This is a realistic plan of something that needs support now. I would encourage council to support the full amount requested because this is something that I believe the intent is to go ahead in 2020. And in the absence, I think council has a lot of good direction in this, in our funds that we've previously approved, but I don't think there is actually any projects necessarily in here. So I would encourage council to defeat the amendment to reduce the amount. I appreciate that there's maybe a different intent there, but the way the motion is right now, I'm not in support. Councillor Thiessen.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Given. Just a question for Director Walker. Our affordable housing initiatives, that 500,000 isn't the only amount of monies that we have available. I seem to recall a motion Councillor Bressie made earlier that in the term that added another chunk to it, and I think we have like another 300,000. Am I wrong in our public housing reserve? I can go back and check. That portion.
Director
Yeah,
Manuel?
338.
So, correct. Our public housing reserve has approximately $350,000 in it. Now, that has very specific uses that we can use it for.
Is there any other, thank you, Director Manuel, is there any other funds available that council set aside for affordable housing as well?
Thank you, Mayor Given. To my knowledge, those were the only two allocated bundles of money. However, council did free up a bit of capital tax yesterday. So,
I don't know. Maybe I know Councillor Bressie's sort of he's got his blue steel face on right now. I'm going to let him talk, but I'm okay to withdraw my motion at this point. I'll withdraw my motion and then I'll let Councillor Bressie follow up because I know I think he knows what I'm talking about.
Well, so could I just make council? If we're going to make a motion, before you make the motion, make sure you know what you're talking about. Make sure that you're specific in what you're asking for, because now we have a motion. Sorry, we have a motion. We have an amendment. We have an amendment that was split, and now we're saying, well, maybe we don't need the amendment that was split. Like, let's make sure that this is complicated enough for all of us to make sure that we're following along. And so we have an amendment. The amendment's going to, yeah. Let's vote on the amendment. Like, let's just make it clear for everybody what we're voting on. We've split the amendment into two parts. One is to reduce the amount to 250,000. That's what we're discussing right now, and that's what we're debating. Let's vote on that, see the outcome of that, and then we'll move on to other business arising depending on the outcome. Any other discussion or debate? I don't see anybody else in the queue. Councillor Thiessen, if you want to close on it? No? Okay. Then I'll call for the vote on the first portion of the amendment, which was to change the amount from 383 to 250,000. Please vote. Thank you. The motion does not carry. Then there's the second portion of the amendment that was split to make the city's support contingent upon support from the County of Grande Prairie and the MD of Greenview. Any discussion or debate on that point? Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'll just let it be known I voted incorrectly last time. I'm not going to change the record because it's a waste of time. But I do want to amend this motion. Can you read it?
No. We have an amendment that has been split. We're voting on the second half of an amendment. We're not going to amend the second half of an amendment. We're not going to go two amendments deep. We're still on Councillor Thiessen.
All right, so I encourage council to defeat this motion. There are other parameters that needed to be amended to the motion as it stands now.
Okay, so we are on Councillor Thiessen's amendment to Councillor Minhas's original motion. This is specifically on, is this funding city support, whatever that may be, contingent upon support from other municipalities? Is there any discussion or debate on that point? Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you, Mayor Given. I'm going to be voting against this amendment, and I do think if this amendment is defeated, then I'll be making a subsequent one to make it contingent on them raising a certain portion of their capital budget. I think it's very appropriate to set aside this funding for. They need to get other support in the community. We need to know that this project's actually going to go forward before we fund it. That being said, I hate to see it tied to funding from specific bodies, especially. Usually, I'm somebody who's we need to contribute our fair share to the region. However, two complications in that is I know there's some significant and unknown financial changes coming down from the province in terms of linear assessments and police funding for our municipal partners. I'm worried that might make them more hesitant than usual to give money to community groups, and I've also got a soft spot for youth. So as much as I usually want to stand up for us, giving our appropriate share, when it comes to vulnerable youth having enough places to to go. That's just not an area. This isn't a particular hill I'm willing to die on for there. So I'll be voting no against this. Although I do think it should be contingent on them getting filed in elsewhere. I just think this is too specific.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bressie. I'll say that I support this portion of the amendment. I think it's reasonable for the city of Grand Prairie to say, hey, this is a regional asset. Other municipalities in the region also need to contribute to that. And being specific in that, I have no problem with that. So I would support the amendment as it stands. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much. I agree that we should have administration analyze when there's enough funds in the kitty that we can release our funds, but they're also expecting lottery funds, grants, and stuff like that too. So those are big asks on top of that as well. So that's just not the two partners that we mentioned, but I will be supporting this.
Councillor O'Toole. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Councillor Bressie, you're back in the queue. You just
Sorry,
had the mic.
Can I make one more point? Would that be in order? Just something else I'd share is I think this is an area where it's appropriate for the city to actually be paying more than our municipal partners for that, in terms of city youth do get more benefit from the Sunrise House. Yes, kids from all over the region do show up there, but city youth can get there by walking or on a bus ride, and it's the most immediate option for them. I think this is and also in our region, the city's just the highest population. I think that it is appropriate for the city to potentially contribute more than other municipalities, and I'd hate to see this funding tied to other municipalities contributing the same amounts as us. So again, it should be contingent on something, but this is too specific. I hope council defeats this.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Bressie. Councillor Palat.
Can I just get some? I thought that they were contingent on receiving $750,000 in government funding. Is that the number that?
Dr. Manuel?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to clarify that. So I actually got a revision as this went about, and their request is actually
talking for a while.
Yeah, their request is going to be $500,000 from each municipality. So we have our $500,000 inclusive of the gift in kind. Their intent is to proceed with a request for $500 from the MD in the county. So a total 1.5.
Okay. I don't see anybody else in the queue other than Councillor Thiessen to close. Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Given. I would support council to endorse this. I know that this is a regional asset for all the youth of our community, and just sort of to push back a little bit on Councillor Bressie. I know that you said that maybe we should be given a little bit more. I don't think it's totally contingent on the dollar amount, or at least the way the motion is worded. I'm looking for that kind of support, and I'm hopeful that they'll match us 100%. For the $500,000, and Councillor Minhas's motion goes through. But we already do provide tons of operational support for Sunrise House, $110,000 in fact every single year, over year. That's funding that we're giving and that nobody else is giving. So we are paying a little more than our county counterparts to ensure that it's a sustainable model within our community to help serve the youth who need it. Put it just very simply. So I'd encourage everyone to support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen, for that close. So as a refresher, we are on the second half of Councillor Thiessen's amendment, which was the essence of which was to make the city's support contingent upon support from the MD of Greenview and the County of Grand Prairie. Call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Bressie would request a revote. Councillor Bressie, is that correct? Okay, so Councillor Bressie has requested a revote. I will call for the vote on Councillor Thiessen's amendment, which would make the city's funding contingent upon support from the MD of Greenview and the County of Grand Prairie. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. Okay, so we're back to Councillor Minhas's original motion, which now two amendments both failed. So we're back to Councillor Minhas's motion as originally made. The city provide the funding as requested from the Council's Strategic Initiatives Fund. Open for discussion and debate. Councillor Bressie.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Given. I'd move that we amend the motion to read contingent on 75% of the capital needs of this project being raised within the next 2 years.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Bressie. So Councillor Bressie is proposing amendment to, rather than make the city's support contingent upon support from other municipalities, to make the city's support contingent upon the balance of the funds being raised within a period of time, in essence. So not really caring about the sources, but caring about the fact that this needs to happen within 2 years. Okay, open for discussion, debate on that point. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I won't be able to support this motion. I'd love to support this because I want to see this happen. But what I don't like is that if this doesn't happen, we basically lock this funds away for 2 years. If it was a year timeline and we still had the ability in this council term to actually do something with it, I could fully support that. And I was going to make a motion similar. I think us locking this money up for 2 years, though, really hand ties the city of Grande Prairie and our ability to help other not-for-profits or other organizations in our community, which I think is what this fund was established for. So if there was an amendment to a year timeline, I had a November 1, 2020 was what I was hoping for. I'd fully support that. I just think 2 years, it's either going to happen or it's not. You know, I think within a year, they're either going to know they're going to have it, or they can come back and say, guys, we're 68% there. Can we have a conversation? But I think anything in life where I've let somebody have too long of a window, they use the whole window. And so I think if this is going to happen, let's let it happen the next year so we can make a decision with it as a council so we can move these funds into the appropriate parts of the community or not.
Thanks, Councillor Platt. Councillor Clayton.
Mayor Given, I agree with similar comments of Councillor Platt. My concern would be with the 2 year time frame, not only is the organization not pushed to a respectable time frame, it doesn't push the partners, potential partners, to a time frame. Organizations such as the provincial government, other municipalities may choose to let this sit longer because they don't want to deal with it right now. And as alluded to from Councillor Platt, it's not realistic that we earmark this money for 2 years when there's other organizations that could use the money as well.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I too am not going to support this motion. Thank you, Councillor Bressie. I know the intent behind it is that you really want to give them a decent timeline to raise the funds and to make it happen. I don't know if I'm down for a timeline. I want to know that our regional partners are involved, and then from there, that's where the ball starts rolling. Everything starts as a small snowball and it rolls downhill. So I don't know if I'll engage into any 75% conditional funding, because that basically says, well, it sets a high bar and it makes it hard when you commit the funds up front to an organization, and then they can go to the private sector or whatever, or even other municipal organizations or higher levels of government. They can say, this is committed funding, not this is potential funding, right? It actually encourages more investment and sooner as well, because they have project backing. And for all those reasons, I can't support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. I don't see anybody else in the queue, so we'll go to Councillor Bressie to close, and maybe just to restate his motion, just so I don't have to do it this time.
Great. Well, the motion was to make this funding contingent on 75% of the funds being raised within 2 years. And if it fails, if nobody beats me to it, I'll make a subsequent one to do it within a year. But just speak to a little bit of what I've heard is just, again, as somebody who's raised significant capital funding for projects for youth in the past, it's, if you've got the money committed there but contingent on things, it usually counts as committed. And it's pretty usual for significant donors to say, yeah, I'll give you this money if I'm 100% confident that it'll actually go forward. And municipal government's a donor you can trust. It's trust. I think that it is as good as this money being committed, even if with this contingent on. The reason I said 2 years is because I think this group sees a real need in our community. I think their partners see a real need in this community. I've got full faith that they are motivated to get this done and get this done quickly if they possibly can. I'd hate for them to have a donor when they're 10 months into this saying, yeah, I can maybe give you money in 3 months, but then your municipal funding is going to expire. So I think 2 years is reasonable, but I totally understand where some of you are coming from as well.
Okay. Thanks for that close, Councillor Bressie. I will call for the vote on Councillor Bressie's motion. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. Councillor Bressie.
Great. Well, then I'd move the council amend the motion to make it contingent to 75% of the funding being raised within 1 year.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Bressie. So do we need to have a discussion, debate on that motion? Doesn't look like we do. Then I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does carry. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. We may never get to Councillor Minhas's original motion here, but I'm going to make another amendment to Councillor Minhas's motion. And it's specific around the funding stream for the motion. I want to see it fully funded as well. I think that will help the cause of getting their 75%. So I'm going to amend it that we take $250,000 from the council strategic initiative and $133,000 from the housing initiative inside of that. So I believe there was $500,000 that hadn't been used. I just want to use a quarter of that, or just over a quarter of that for this, and $250,000 from the rest of the fund.
Sorry, so you're meaning from the $500,000 that was here for affordable housing?
For that, yeah, out of the $500,000 for affordable housing, I'd like to take $133,000 from that fund, and the balance of $250,000 from the remaining funds. The reason I'm putting that specific is I want this to go towards the housing affordability. I think we've had this $500,000 line item sitting there since we got elected, or since administration.
Last year.
Yeah, but administration put this for us, and it's sitting there. Last year will be our last kick at this, and we haven't touched it yet. So I think if we're going to do something, let's make a statement and do something with that specific affordable housing money, and the rest of the balance can come out of the remaining funds. It still leaves us with the ability to do other housing initiatives, and it still leaves us some remaining funds for other initiatives in the future as well.
Okay, so I'm wondering if we're getting a level of detail that maybe it's just not. I appreciate the intent. My sense is, though, that council has set aside this $500,000 that hasn't been spent on anything that's in the Strategic Initiatives Fund. So if you think about the motion says, take it from the Strategic Initiatives Fund, administration would take it from that. I don't know if administration would say, well, no, we're not touching the portion of the fund that was set aside for affordable housing. Like I think we just might be getting overly specific. I'm not going to stand in the way of the motion. I don't know that I don't know that it's necessary. I think.
So can I have a question for administration? If we approve the full $383,000, where would the funding be taken from?
There's a good approach to ask how administration would interpret council's direction.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Without clarification as to taking it from an already allocated bucket, we would take it out of the remaining $538,000 that is available.
Thank you for that. So that's and I appreciate that. That was what I was assuming was going to happen. So that's why I want to leave that motion stand. That I want to be very specific that we're taking $138,000 out of the housing affordability side of it.
Okay. So there was a pot set aside for the affordable housing, and Councillor Platt's motion is specific that of that $500,000 that council previously dedicated to affordable housing initiatives, that $133,000 be directed towards this project, and that the balance of the city's support come from the overall remaining balance of the Strategic Initiatives Fund. Okay. Thanks, Councillor Platt. Thanks for that clarification and administration on how administration would interpret it. Councillor Friesen.
Thank you. I will not support this motion. I think that we have our $500,000 in affordable housing. We just passed an affordable housing strategy that once we kind of wrap our heads around that, how that may play out, we may need that $500,000 next year. And I'd like to keep it there. In the event we don't, for future projects, we can move it out of there. But let's not move it out of there in anticipation when we have unallocated funds sitting. So I won't support this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Friesen. Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Yeah, I appreciate what you're doing here. I just don't see the Sunrise House fitting into what council's conversations are at this point for affordable housing. So end of the day, when the pot dries up, for council strategic priorities initiatives. So I just it's still a little too specific for me, so I can't support it. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. I'll also say that I won't support the motion. Similar to Councillor Clayton, I think that there are a number of things that are identified there that look like they're fixed, that are actually still subject to a fair amount of variability. I'm not as concerned about identifying that. I think there are components of the Sunrise House project that are actually explicitly affordable housing rather than emergency housing. My understanding is that they're going to build some what I would call second stage units for youth who may come in at the emergency side and then move into longer term housing. So I think we should miss that component, but I don't support the motion. I think we have the flexibility, and the principle is the city providing capital funding to this this project? I think we sort that out, and we'll sort that out with a vote on Councillor Minhas's main motion when we get to it. This level of specificity, I think, doesn't necessarily aid us. Councillor O'Toole.
Yeah, I won't be supporting this either, Mayor Given. I think administration has a good understanding where the funds should come from, and they can give us some feedback and when they make that decision. So, thank you.
Councillor O'Toole. I don't see anybody else in the queue on Councillor Platt's amendment. Go ahead, Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I guess for me, the reason I want to be specific about this is we haven't put any money towards housing affordability at this, and I think that totally fits that bucket. What if we don't support this? Then today, what we're doing is we're taking all of that money out of what's left in our bucket, and now unless it fits one of those areas, we can't fund anything in the future. So if it doesn't fit one of those specific key areas, we can't fund something. So if pickleball come forward or other things, we'd have a hard. Okay, maybe we could. I think we'd have a philosophical debate of whether we feel it fits in that area. This specifically is a housing affordability initiative. So that's why I'm asking for it to come out of there. We haven't put any other funding. Maybe we'll have a conversation later today and we may put some funding there, but we've asked administration to work hard to not keep squirreling away money, and we've got a fund sitting in there that's been allocated specifically for housing affordability. I don't understand why we wouldn't be trying to use it as a portion of these funds.
Thanks for that close, Councillor Platt. So Councillor Platt's amendment, which I think we'll understand, was to specify the sources of funding within Council's Strategic Priorities Initiative. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. We may have arrived back at Councillor Minhas's original motion. As amended, I think we had one successful amendment. We didn't. Oh, there's a good object lesson. Council members are reminding me that not one of those amendments was successful. Then we can vote on the motion that Councillor Minhas made. I'll look to our recording secretary. Did we have the amendment for contingent? Okay, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, is that we had out of all those. Okay. So 1 out of 4 amendments were successful. We're batting 25%. And the motion that was successful was to provide a 1-year timeline on that, that contingent upon 75% being raised within 1 year. We're back to Councillor Minhas to close on the original motion. And I'm going to say that we probably have had enough overall debate on the total concept of the project. Councillor Minhas.
Thank you, Mayor Given. This motion, I put it through reason. When the delegation was here, they explained a very reasonable question, and we do need it for the young people to have more availability as we have growth in the region. And I was very impressed with the board and the delegation that day when they came here to for the delegation's part. They speak out, and they said it, either we get it or not, they're going to start this project, and they got the land lined up, and also they got $1.6 million, and plus they're going to sell that old place where the only 4 people resident. Now this will create 10 people into the 4-plex, 8-plex, whatever they're making. So I was very confident they will do it. So we need to support them to city, especially young people, even if we can organize the life for a few people or a year or a lot more in the future time. So we needed to our young people to get back onto the organization and growth. So this is the reason I like to everybody to ask to support this one. And we already had the money sitting on the side, so we might as well use it and use it on the better purpose. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Minhas. So I'll call for the vote on Councillor Minhas's motion as amended. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does carry unanimously. I see that we are at 12 o'clock. We do have a couple of other items to deal with, as well as some open space, I guess, in the agenda for other items that may arise. My advice would be we're having pizza today. We're going high end, and pizza's better warm. So my suggestion would be that we break now. How long should we break for? Are there other? Well, I just want to make sure. Are there other council members? I just want to make sure. Are there other council members that somebody may have made some plans to complete some work today as well? Councilor Minhas, I see that you're heading out. Can you be back in half an hour? Okay, so let's go 12:45 to be back. Okay, so we'll make sure that people are able to complete. We will not amend the time. We'll be back at 12:45.